Young was also well aware of the confusion his subordinates were feeling. But he just left them be. They wouldn't accept an excuse that wasn't an excuse either. Most of all, Dantalion was a being that gave confusion to others. Even if he disappeared, Young still had retained his influence for having contact with Dantalion. That's why time was the only medicine. Young decided to wait. The presence of a demon god became stronger. Young was getting closer to the fissure, where Gremory was at. Anguish guided Young, and he was planning to get recognized through the fragments of the fissure at that place. But the aura of a demon god was getting bigger the closer they got to the fissure. Could it be Gremory? It would be understandable if Gremory had come out of the fissure, but that was difficult to happen. It's not Gremory. Young shook his head. In the first place, Gremory didn't release an aura that was as unpleasant as that one. And also the place the aura was felt, it wasn't at the fissure. Form a squad of fast and stealthy people and check the surroundings. They had to be stealthy from this point on. He also had to take into account the probability of Gremory having perished. If the aura that was released belonged to a demon god purged up Gremory and the opposition party, then Young needed to move all the more carefully. But of course Young could feel him without having to look for him, but that would be the same for the other party. That's why he sent a scouting team to search the surroundings from a point the other party couldn't find him out. Even grasping aura was hard to do if the opponent was hiding it earnestly. Gremory is caught inside the fissure, but you can't enter it without permission from the other side. But regardless of that, there was another demon god nearby. His objective was surely Gremory. You may think that the demon god also belonged to the opposition party, but would they release such an aura as hostile as this? The one aiming for Gremory was surely from the supporting party. They would exterminate all the races that held them back on massacring all races excluding the demon race. After waiting for about half a day, Taken and the scout party returned. They had captured a demon. His body was a mess and his face was also distorted, but they could feel a strong magic power from him. Damn it! Azul saw that demon and cursed while frowning. Taken approached Young and explained about the demon. There are a lot of demons. Seems like there are easily more than 1 million of them. Fortunately, we caught the one that was called as the Chief Staff. Young asked. Chief Staff? Whose? Larigi, the demon god of the battlefield. But the one that answered was Azul. Azul was frowning with all he had. It was different from when he shuddered looking at Enroth. He was frowning but was also biting his teeth like he knew about his wickedness. Larigi, huh? The demon god of the 14th seat, Larigi. He really was a demon god related to the battlefield. And his destruction condition was really simple. Defeat at war. Young was able to eliminate him if he got defeated in a battlefield. But he had shown for a long time in the battlefield. The evidence supporting it was that he never lost once. I'm really warning you this time. Don't become an enemy of Larigi. If you need to, run to the edge of the world. Then you might be able to delay your death. Azul spoke sincerely. Young stroked his chin. Larigi. He was certainly a strong demon god. He was one of the most outstanding ones, at least at wars. Young had a lot less forces than him and cards he could utilize immediately. In the first place, there were more than 30 demon kings under Larigi. They must be weaker than Enroth, but it was still hard to face them when 30 of them gathered at once. An absolute difference in strength. Young going over there was no different to moths flying towards fire. The gazes he felt nearby prickled him. Young faced several hardships until now and had never lost until now. And it seemed like he was believing that he could offer an outstanding play. But he couldn't come with an answer even if he calculated the several variables. I should have a deep conversation with that staff commander. If he wanted to grasp the enemy in more detail, then he needed to interrogate the demon in front of him first. A demon army of 2,200,000. 30 demon kings working for him. That meant that it was a huge alliance composed by 30 huge troops. It was said that 2 of them were at the same level as Sharshazer. The staff commander said that Larigi led his army and entered this land to execute Gremory himself. And he shouldn't even be lying because he answered that after having been turned into an undead. When Young listened to the story, he guessed that Larigi might know of Gremory's destruction condition. Even I don't know of Gremory's condition. Dantalion said that he knew the conditions for all the demon gods, but that was a lie. He was only able to grasp half of them. But of course, that alone was outstanding, but that also meant that Young had to obtain the information for the remaining half by himself. That's not enough. But he had no high-class information enough to give Larrigi defeat. The remaining method was to somehow contact Gremory and join hands, but now that everything in the fissure got blocked, that may become a reckless bet. Myung shook his head. Thinking about it coldly, his probabilities to defeat Larrigi was 0. Even if he allied with Gremory secretly, that probability didn't surpass 1%. And that's because he is Larrigi, a demon god that was well acquainted with the battlefield. It was impossible to defeat him at war. Was he going to charge towards a determined defeat? He couldn't do that. It was better to return, organize themselves, and think about some other method. We will retreat. He made a decision. He couldn't come with an answer in the current situation. Myung was feeling extremely confused while returning. A probability. Having to defeat all the demon gods was the mission given to him, but the probability for that to happen was 0. He couldn't do anything to Larrigi right now, so what was he going to do against the demon gods that had a stronger authority than him? Did he have to charge towards a determined defeat? That was a stupid thing to do. He would return and reorganize themselves. Call in more forces and grow in strength. But that wasn't enough. Reality was that they wouldn't be able to defeat Larrigi alone. Another method. Another clever move. If he couldn't get recognition from Gremory, then it would be hard to get help from the other demon gods of the opposition party. In the first place, the reason he tried to get recognition from Gremory was to control the demon gods and create confusion. But I can't do that. He gritted his teeth and felt pressured. How could he think of something as stupid as this? How did he come with the certainty to do something impossible? He couldn't understand it. And didn't even try to understand it. He wasn't able to become Myung. Aren't you too fast on giving up? It was then. A voice ringing in his head. Myung frowned. No, Dantalian wearing the mask of Myung frowned. How? Your soul must have lost its way. A contract was formed the moment Myung nodded. Dantalian got able to move Myung's body completely. After that, Dantalian started to imitate Myung. He tried to completely become Myung. But he couldn't understand it. He couldn't finish his mission. I have already done such a thing as hiding my soul. The existence in his head sneered at him. Dantalian tensed up. Hide the soul. Is that something possible? On top of that, it was so stealthy that Dantalian couldn't notice even if it was in the same body. Dantalian, I learned a lot of things thanks to you. I want to thank you. The voice of the real Myung became louder. Dantalian opened his eyes widely. Don't tell me that he even figured his own destruction condition. He hid stealthily and took all of his secrets. There was nothing special. That your real name couldn't be found out. Not letting you accomplish the mission. You are fated to always be a fake. The mission was the mission of the body that got taken control of. And Dantalian came to a conclusion that Myung's mission was impossible. One of the conditions have already been opened the moment he came to that conclusion. Now, Dantalian's destruction condition would be completed the moment Myung called Dantalian's real name. Stop. You will need my help to destroy the other demon gods. Even if it's impossible for you, it is possible for me. If I'm here, you will be able to grasp everything from them and defeat them. Dantalian, you can only imitate them. You coveted over my body but couldn't figure out everything about me. He would simply retreat when Larrigi was in front of him. How foolish was that? Even if it is impossible, he shouldn't just come to a conclusion beforehand. At least Myung didn't like that method. Even if Dantalian imitated Myung, he couldn't become Myung as is. It was merely an imitation in the end. That was the reason others felt uncomfortable with him. James, how did you, who was once a human, become a demon god? Arg. Dantalian clenched his chest. Something that couldn't happen was happening. But Myung was also as surprised as him. Myung had taken a peek at some fragments of Dantalian's memories. He wasn't able to grasp everything. The reason for that was that the time Dantalian spent was far too extensive. But Myung could know that Dantalian wasn't always a demon god. He had been a human. And a human on top of that. You will regret it if you know the truth. You will lose your objective and go astray, as there is no hope in Pandora's box. He staggered. Fwish. His wings spread and started to burn. That fire burned Dantalian Myung's body. The fire of purification. The power of Gabriel had activated. It was purifying the soul that was trying to degrade. Dantalian screamed in pain. Then, the body got burnt black and Dantalian's soul disappeared. But Muyang stood up once again after having taken over his body again. Smoke was surging up as if an accident occurred. He should have died originally, but Muyang was an immortal. He didn't die by getting burned. Muyang looked at the sky. It looked like he had moved quite quickly to try to lessen the losses instinctively. Thanks to that, his army didn't suffer any damages. But Muyang was putting a complicated expression. Even the aftertaste he gives is bad. Muyang had seen his memories, but he couldn't know what was true or not in that. It meant that his memories were lacking from veracity. Solomon, the destroyed world, and perhaps the other demon gods too. Muyang shook his head. The results didn't change. The things he had to do were the same. Muyang regenerated his skin and looked far away. Dantalion had screamed that it was impossible, but Muyang had some chances. Sky Lord. It seemed like Dantalion didn't know that this body was loved by monsters. Or he forgot what was love in by itself. Demon God Largy. He was currently in command of over 2 million devils, and he was trying to find a way to take down Gremory. He who wore the green armor and helmet with a horn had the typical appearance of a hunter. However, he was big enough to reach 50 and he also had a sword and a bow that was suitable for his figure. The interval had become shorter. A wide plain. 2 million devils gathered around the circular-shaped hole. Among them, a demon king had approached and spoke to Largy as if he was whispering. Largy lowered his head and then rubbed his chin. Gremory, you are making a last frantic attempt. He shifted his gaze and looked at the fallen ground. The sunken ground, it was the place that was linked to Gremory's fissure. However, unless it was opened by someone from Gremory's side, it was hard to infiltrate it. If he could locate the fissure, the story would change. The gate that leads to the fissure is continuously changing. If he could predict and locate the fissure outside and link it to another fissure, he would be able to infiltrate easily. But Gremory had figured it out. She had changed the gate before the fissures could link. To be exact, you could say she had changed the lock on the gate. An enormous amount of magical energy would have been used. It is like a suicide. Of course, it was a way to buy time, but that was all. As time passed, she wouldn't be able to withstand the vast magical power. Even if you were a demon god, you didn't have infinite magical powers. Someday she would reach her limit, and in the end the only destruction would be left. Even more, to have the gate changed more frequently. Lardy. As long as he was guarding the surroundings, she couldn't escape. In the end, it was to stall time. This isn't fun. He was the demon god of the battlefield. He enjoyed wars and has not lost once. But it didn't mean he wanted this sort of victory either. He existed to fight and fight and fight some more. He didn't feel like he was winning just by guarding the surrounding and acting as a watchman. His body ached to fight. Only demon gods could face a demon god. In that sense, he believed the one who was acting as the leader of the opposing party, Gremory, would be a good opponent. It was a disappointment, and that was why Largy was angry. Diablo, where is he hiding? I could be less bored if he who burned and killed whores showed up. Largy touched the bow on his back. He was the demon god of the battlefield and also a dragon hunter. Few hundreds of dragons were killed by his bow. As Diablo also had the form of a dragon, if he could kill it, it would become the best ornament. Diablo, the one who killed Horus, the demon god of fire, with his flames. If he could hunt it down and hang him on his castle, his status would be higher than any demon god. The demon kings answered Largy. We are continuing our search, but we can't even find his trace. From the beginning, it is also suspicious that Diablo had passed Sky Lord and came to this place. But Horus had been killed at this place. By Diablo. Surely Gremory found out how to summon Diablo. Or else, it could be due to someone else's intervention. Diablo. He was a demon god from another dimension. At least he didn't fit in this world. He was heterogeneous, foreign, and something from outside that shouldn't exist. And so, they created the Sky Lord and placed it there. They made him protect the border. Only to stop Diablo from entering. At least, until they could eradicate the internal commotion and the opposing party. But he had destroyed Horus who had appeared at this place. How? It was definitely due to the intervention of Gremory or something else. Intervention. There was another third party. He had heard so. I'll prove to you that your fire does not work on me. However, he didn't care. Largy gained more interest. If he were to appear, he would hunt him and make him into a souvenir. If someone else were to interfere, he would get rid of it. Largy was completely focused on Diablo. More than Gremory, who was hiding. Diablo was worth that much. An outsider had entered. It also means we who are inside can also go out. That was right. Diablo was a kind of proof. Although he wasn't certain how he had entered, it was important that he had entered the underworld from his world. In other words, there was surely a pathway that connected to the outside. I can be free from Solomon's curse. Larrigi clenched his teeth. Diablo was a start. Larrigi was planning to be the start. Find it. I don't care what it is. Find a way to call Diablo. I'll do my best. Also, do you have more to say? Far from this place I found trace of a large-scale army. Larrigi frowned. Trace, you say? From a distance where I can't detect. That is so. They were situated slightly further than you can detect. I think hundreds of thousands of soldiers were waiting there. Larrigi crossed his eyes. Larrigi had the eyes that allowed him to detect objects that were 100 kilometers away. The distance where he could just sense things were double that. But if he wasn't able to notice it, it meant that the army existed farther than 200 kilometers. While completely erasing the trace. Larrigi, the demon god of the battlefield, always was on high alert. But the fact that he couldn't detect them, it meant that they were quite an army. They were there. Are you saying they are no longer there? Yes, we are currently following their trace. Larrigi frowned. Was a demon god from the opposing party? However, there was no way the opposing party would roam this place as they pleased. There were very few demon gods who knew about the range he was able to detect the presence of. Although they could be part of a demon god's army under Gremory's command, this order was specifically given by Baal. Was there a demon god who would go against Baal's order and be his enemy? He doubted. Unless it was Paimon, who Larrigi couldn't tell what he was thinking. And he was already keeping an eye on Paimon. A third party who wasn't part of the agreeing or the opposing party. They seemed to have come to find out about something and returned. They said there was intervention from outside. Maybe they were directly associated. Gremory and Diablo and the third party. To be exact, if they were already aware of Larrigi, it would be quite interesting for him. They could also be associated with Diablo. They left a trace. Are they stupid, confident, or... It was also important to know if they left a trace on purpose or by accident. However, Larrigi wasn't worried. He was the demon god of the battlefield and a veteran who had never lost. He had never lost an opponent he had his eyes on. Organize a track team and chase them. You should never lose them. Yes. The Demon King bowed down to show respect. Larrigi once again touched his bow. I hope he is worth being shot at with this bow. The opinions of the demon gods were divided. The agreeing party, those who want to get rid of all humanity and all different species and create a new world to become a true divinity, and the opposing party who were against it. And the leader of the opposing party was Gremory. Oh Gremory, you wouldn't withstand like this. Gremory's face was gaunt. She was still incredibly beautiful and pure, but she couldn't maintain her usual appearance in a situation where her magical powers were draining. But I still need to do it. Even if you slow down a bit, they wouldn't dare to enter. It isn't like even Baal himself could manage the fissure himself. You can't look down on Larrigi. He is among the top demon gods who can interpret magic. Gremory sat on the chair made of stone and held 2 beads in her hand. The beads continued to suck magical powers and change the fissure. In front of her, a huge dimensional portal was making a static noise. But like this, unlike the other servants who followed other demon gods, those who followed Gremory were very close. They served and loved her as a true god. Gremory also knew of this, but she couldn't back away. It would only last for a few months. The speed was too fast. It was proceeding at least 10 years faster than she had expected. They thought they would act after they found the miracle-written book, Ars Nova. But they were actively acting as soon as Diablo appeared, even though they couldn't find Ars Nova. Rather, the appearance of Diablo is making them act faster. Diablo did not appear in this world due to Ars Nova. After having something activated, he appeared after ripping through another world's wall. Diablo was like an enemy to the other demon gods, but at the same time he was hope. A way to escape this world. And so, Gremory was barely hanging on. As the agreeing party need to get rid of the opposing party for them to roam freely, they had to first get rid of Gremory, the leader, which made sense. What do you think about borrowing his strength once more? You mean him? Gremory's voice shook a little. Even a bit of fear was mixed in. It meant that he was that much harder to talk about. Of course they had won over the danger of horrors with his help. However, Gremory's luck was almost running out. If they were to rely on his strength again they would lose everything. He wouldn't help us. On top he had disappeared after swallowing horrors up. Even if they were to seek his help, they were in a situation where they couldn't. The surrounding demons' face hardened. They were also feeling it. The being on the outside that Larrigi was waiting to kill them. The demon god of the battlefield. An outstanding being who had never been defeated in battle. Their compatibility was horrible. If the gate were to open and they were to have a face-to-face combat, her odds would be very close to zero. Not a lot of time was left before the sword touched her throat. Was only destruction left? Gremory knew very well of this truth. However, there was no way truly. Gremory's prediction was off and she was unable to read the quickly changing situation. As she was surrounded before she could gather the opposing party. At that moment the fissure shook. It meant that the enemies found the gate. She needed to change it again. In an instant vast amount of magical power was drained out of Gremory and she looked pale. The demons looked at Gremory with sad eyes. And then spoke with a determined look. If the situation arrives, we the 26 demon kings and our army will do our best to protect you. The demon kings and devils showed their determination. Behind them millions of devils kneeled. However, they didn't know that they were forgetting someone. From the outside, the 27th demon king started to act. The name of the person who would create a fresh breeze in a storm. Strange guys are following. Taken spoke. Originally, Taken was the right-hand man of Lucifer who reigned in Azura's path, but after Lucifer had been absorbed by Muyang, Taken followed him. A warrior who was skilled in swordmanship with the form of a death knight. However, his fighting power had already surpassed the final state of a death knight, Doom Knight, that was told to be the legendary state. And his senses were comparable to the transcendentals. I think they figured out our location. Beside him, Bei Sungmin spoke. Sungmin, who had become an elder lich, had long surpassed the level of a demon king. As he was able to continue a fight with Inroth, who was said to be one of the strongest demon kings. I'm a bit late. And after receiving their reports, Muyang made a short reply. 3 days have passed since they have left the area where Gremory's fissure was located. They were late by a day. Did he think too highly of Larrigi? Or, did it mean that Larrigi was that much more focused on the situation with Gremory? What was certain was that he didn't have much time. If Larrigi opens the fissure, Gremory will instantly be exposed. Normally the agreeing party would act much later. It was something he realized after absorbing Dantalion. That they had to get the miracle book, Ars Nova, to freely act. But time started to move almost 10 years faster. The reason? He was unsure. However, as the past and the present had changed, the reason would be due to himself. Memories of Dantalion are too ambiguous. However, it is clear that I need to gather the strength of the opposing party. He needed to destroy Larrigi and use Gremory to increase their forces. Although the opposing party was small in number, their fighting power wouldn't be ignorable. Thus he needed to make them fight against each other. He needed to be the final winner. He was going to save mankind and reveal the truth of this world. However, that didn't mean he had plans to let the opposing party live. To kill his final target, Baal, he needed to kill the rest of the 71 demon gods. As that was one of the extinction conditions. Muyang, what are you going to do? Taken spoke. Muyang looked around. About 300,000 soldiers. Although it was much smaller in number than the 2.2 million demons Larrigi had, there was no reason why they couldn't fight if they were to fight them individually. As I've left a trace on purpose, they would obviously send a tracking team. This also was a situation Muyang had intended. Larrigi's main army wouldn't be able to leave far from Gremory's fissure. It meant that it would be hard for Larrigi to send a full-scale army and they would only be able to have a small-scale team to trace Muyang down. However, it would be made with elites. A little taste. First, Muyang was planning to find out how strong Larrigi's elites were. Of course, with this small-scale battle, Larrigi would also try to find out about Muyang, but to sum it up, hiding their strength the most was winning. Larrigi was sensitive about winning and losing. He couldn't help but to be. From the beginning, as Larrigi's destruction condition was defeating in war, it could be helped but be a sensitive matter. There will be a dent in his pride if he was to lose even a small-scale fight. Muyang looked at Taken. Taken looked at Muyang with anticipations. As if he was telling Muyang to leave it to him. It meant he was going to go fight, win, and return. So Muyang made a simple reply. Lose by a small margin. Yeah, I'll go and win. Wait, lose? Taken asked what Muyang meant. It was because his expectations plummeted all at once. However, Muyang didn't say it wrong. We need to repeat it a few times so that they would increase the size of the group they send out. Muyang's strategy was simple. He was going to use the mentality that it might work if they were to add a bit more strength. He was going to let them win in small-scale battles, and when the war intensifies he was going to take back the victory. On top, Larrigi couldn't remove his main unit. He needed at least 1.5 million demons in order to easily face Gremory's troops. At most, Larrigi could only take out 700,000 troops to face Muyang. Muyang was going to hunt down that number by small bits. Sungmin, you gather all the souls of dead demons. The souls. Sungmin tilted his head slightly. Gathering the souls was completely different than making them into undead. If Sungmin just needed to gather them, he could gather 1 million souls. The problem was that the souls were useless if he was to gather them like that. Then Muyang made a small smile. Don't we need something to feed the Sky Lord? No matter how insignificant they were, the Sky Lord had a strong desire to eat. It was similar to gluttony. And the soul of hundreds of thousands of demons would be a great feast for it. Of course, the greatest feast would be Muyang's body itself. Muyang's body was on the verge of demigod's rank, and as he had now earned the shell of the immortal king, he had become the best medicine to consume. A drop of Muyang's blood could be a strong poison, or the best elixir. If it could consume his entire body, even the lowest rank goblin could become a being ranked demon king or higher. From Skylord's point of view, Muyang was truly the best living healthy meal, as its only instinct was to consume. So before then Muyang needed it to be somewhat full. Whatever the creature, if it was full, its movements would become slower. Sky Lord. You are like a double-edged sword. Muyang clenched his fist tightly. A monster among monsters that was created to stop Diablo. However, Muyang was planning to tame even that monster. There was a total of 3 demon groups that were sent to track down Muyang's army. The Demon King of the 3rd Legion, Grukas, the Demon King of the 7th Legion, Bru, and the Demon King of the 11th Legion, Invasion. In total 200,000. It was a large number considered they were groups sent out to track them down. In reality, they were given the order to completely annihilate their enemies. With so many badges fluttering, they grouped as one and were focused on their order with the eyes of a hawk and the claws of a lion. They were the strongest army. They were the foundation that bore the greatest war fanatic Larrigi. Unlike the other demon kings under other demon gods' command, they didn't fight for credit. They fought only to win their battles. Obliteration. They were also heartless. When they decide who their enemies are, they wouldn't let even one of them escape alive. Taken was in awe when he saw them running towards them in an orderly fashion only for destruction. An amazing force. He had never faced such an army before. He didn't even feel this much force when he was facing Inroth and his demon kings. An army of 200,000 men had the force few multiple times its size. He felt eager to fight. He wanted to fight them properly and win. How I need to lose. Only 50,000 ghost cavalries existed behind him. 50,000. Taken's soldiers were a bit higher quality than his enemy. However, it was hard to overcome the 4 times difference in number. Even so, Taken was confident that he would win. However, Muyang told him to lose. And by a small margin. It was the same as taking a step back. Taken sighed. Either way, Taken decided to follow Muyang. It wasn't just because Muyang had absorbed his original master, Lucifer. Muyang, he was a bit different. He continuously improved. He continuously sought something new. Taken was changing simply by being near Muyang. He was becoming stronger. Taken, who was continuously walking in place for few thousands of years, had changed completely in a few years. Thus he even set a goal to surpass him one day. After he gained Muyang's rib bone, he felt like he was gaining more stamina. Of course, that didn't mean Taken liked Muyang very much. I don't know what he is thinking. He couldn't predict Muyang's personality. He didn't even like the fact that he treated him like his servant. But did someone say that the last to smile was the winner? Taken was going to bring Muyang to the top. When Muyang reached the very top, Taken was going to face him head-on and win. Then he would be able to prove his greatness. It would mean he had surpassed Lucifer as well. Just now was time to learn. It was the best opportunity to act endlessly under him and to find out what drove Muyang. To do this, Taken was following Muyang. It was different from Sungmin's blind faith. Nevertheless, they were similar in some ways. I'll do it. He was going to think of this as a part of a teaching. A way to fight well although he lost. Swoosh. Taken took out the sword. I'll take down at least one of the three. He looked at the three demon kings. It was the moment Taken's goal was set. In Dantalian's memories, the things related to the Sky Lord was very faint. This was unavoidable because Dantalian was an outsider, unlike the other ordinary demon gods. But there were things he was able to figure out because he was an outsider. For example, the things needed to control the Sky Lord. The existence of demons who procured such things. To control the Sky Lord, I need to feed it nebula. Nebula. In other words, the thing that was called a star. The demons were captures, those who were selected by the star, and feeding it to the Sky Lord. Perhaps the Sky Lord might have something similar to Muyang. And now Muyang was going to attack the castle with the praise he had gathered. In wrath. Swoosh. In wrath, who became an undead, rose like a smoke beside Muyang. Although he was one of the strongest demon kings in the past, after he lost against Muyang, he had become an undead and acted as a puppet who followed Muyang's orders. Muyang spoke towards in wrath. Shouldn't you greet your friend whom you haven't met in a while? Muyang's eyes were looking towards the castle afar that had black smokes emitting. The castle was the place where he would feed the Sky Lord. And the one who ruled over the castle was one of the very powerful demon kings. The ultimate 18 demon king. 7 mountain. 6 lord. 5 star. In wrath was one of the strongest demon kings who was in the final 5. And the one who protected the castle was one rank below him, one among the 6 lord. Swoosh. In wrath started to move. Surrounding him, a huge darkness swirled around him. Swing. Prayish. Subsequently, with a huge sound, one side of the castle wall was evaporated. It was too much for a welcoming greeting. However, it was a way to announce the existence on this side. At the same time, numerous demons popped out. In wrath. Why are you attacking us? In wrath was a famous demon king. However, it seemed like his defeat against Muyang was not yet known. After a big welcome, In wrath kneeled in front of Muyang. The demons were astonished at the scene. Then the commotion died off. The demon king of Rose, Sora. It was because the owner of the castle had appeared. Sora. He was collecting the star. In Muyang's standpoint, it was really a disgraceful act. I'm the star who eats stars. As the true star eater wasn't the Sky Lord or the demon king Sora, but Muyang himself. It was at that moment. Growl. From the sky, a red star, the star of the Absolute, started to shine. The star of destruction. A member of 6 lords, the demon king Sora. She cried in astonishment. Perhaps she recognized Muyang's star. She had collected a lot of stars. It was not strange for her to know the type of star Muyang had. In wrath, why do you follow the star of destruction? In wrath's didn't budge. And Sora's cry provided Muyang with very important information. The enemy's ability to learn information was very lacking. The demon king of Roses, Sora, was the follower of demon god of the 3rd seat, Visago. And Visago's nickname was, the one who sees the other side. Sora, the vassal of Visago, still did not know the news of Enratha's defeat. It was proof that most of the demon kings and demon gods did not know of the news. Perhaps Amon might have intentionally hidden this truth. It was possible that he didn't want to let anyone know that his strongest demon king, Enrath, had lost to a mere human. Either way, it was good news. Enrath could be more of a use. In addition, making the demon kings as my servant. Muyang's best skill was the art of death. The skill that allowed him to make undead. He reached the level that was also recognized by Deathlord, and the strength even allowed him to make a demon king as an undead he controlled. The demon gods don't know yet. There was a lack of preparation and checks towards Muyang. So he was going to get the maximum benefit before they notice. Muyang's greatest strength was information. On the contrary, their weaknesses were information. If they find out, they would not be willing to send their troops in separate divisions. They would rather try to wipe him out all at once. That's because Muyang was like a natural enemy to them. Before they find out, I have to gain power that they can't ignore. Quickly, the foundation was laid. His fighting powers that reached demigod level and his solid foundation. Now he needed to quickly expand from the ground up. Time was not on his side. And neither was their side. From now on the violent fight of wits would begin. And first of all, the most powerful demon kings, the strongest 18. If they combine the power of 18, they shall be comparable to a demon god. The demon gods were powerful. They had the authority to be called a god. But demon gods were not invincible. If you were able to manage everything alone, they wouldn't have the need for demon kings and devils. They also needed a foundation to support themselves. And if he could overcome the mighty 18 demon kings, it would be a good enough warning to the demon gods. First, in wrath. For you, one of the 5 most powerful demon kings, to follower the star of executor. Does Amon know of this? No. The demon god of the 7th seat. The one who is able to use all kinds of magic. The original master of Enroth. But even his magic could not stop Muyang's strength of death. What about the Lord of the Roses, the child of the blessed trail? Was Visego's forbidden power better than Muyang's power? He became curious. Muyang was a type who couldn't resist curiosity. So Muyang held Anguish. Zizi. Zaz-zap. Black lightning formed around Anguish. Dark chain lightning was automatically activated. This S++ rank automatic magic had the power to destroy most castles. Even more, with one of Anguish's true ability, strengthening of all attack and barrier skills, allowed it to exhibit few times its normal strength. As a one-off attack, it could be considered as similar to the highest grade magic Meteor Deluge. Zaz-zap. Anguish sliced the wilderness. Then huge black lightning ripped through space. The demon king of roses, Sora, should have prepared and attacked upon seeing Muyang. It was a big mistake to turn her attention to Muyang because she was too focused on Enroth. Crash. Black lightning spreads widespread, causing a huge explosion. At the same time, it burned the demons. Subsequent storms swept and the front line disappeared in a flash. Star of Destruction. How could a star executor do this? A star executor. It seemed like Demon King Sora was aware of Muyang's star. If not, it would not be possible to call Muyang by those words. Destroy your enemies. After breaking down the front line, Muyang took out Anguish. At the same time, thud, thud, thump, the demons ran out. The specters and monsters in the form of beasts began to move forward insanely to destroy their enemies. Enroth. Swoosh. Enroth disappeared as a shadow. Soon only 5 nine-tailed foxes remained around Muyang. These 9-tailed foxes in the form of beautiful women were Muyang's most powerful specters. You guys help Enroth. Understood. We will do as you request. We can kill them all, correct? The 5 nine-tailed foxes wiggled their tails as they folded the space and approached Enroth. Soon Enroth appeared in the center of the demons and spread his hands. Dense spider web was created. The demons that were caught were struggling. The 9-tailed foxes pulled out their fox beads. Every time they wagged their 9 tails, the beads shined and fox lights pop out to burn the demons. And Muyang looked at the enemy's side. The demon king of roses, Sora. Was she taken back from his sudden attack? He was trembling. You can't do whatever you want just because you are carried by Enroth. Being carried by Enroth? No. It was the opposite. Enroth was being carried by Muyang. Nevertheless, Enroth was perfect to grab their attention. As Muyang was hidden and he was able to act more as he pleased. I don't have much time for you, Sora. Tekken was buying time. Muyang needed to take over this place before the number of scouts increased. And it was a waste to spend time and effort on Sora. Bear. Anguish cried. It wanted to blood of the Demon King. Muyang nodded. As if he was replying that it would soon have it. The castle burned. Everything was ruined. And Sora knelt down. There were a lot of iron bars in the surrounding. All kinds of different species, the ones chosen by the star. They were staring at Muyang and Sora with empty eyes. Why are you not killing me? Kill me without shame. Muyang smiled. You can't kill important stuff. Demon King Sora knelt, but Muyang admired her. She withstood 40 of 50 stances of Muyang's sword. Even the fire spirit Efrat was able to survive only 45 stances. She was indeed one of the most powerful demon kings. If he was to make her into an undead alive, she would become a use to him. Star of Destruction. Visego will curse you. If so, then that curse must also be destroyed. Grip. Muyang grabbed Sora's hair tightly. And he recalled the art of death. Even if someone wasn't nearly death, he became strong enough that he could half-force his opponent to become an undead. Time would tell whether Visego's forbid dance or if Muyang's power of death would be more powerful. Gaia. As black energy swallowed Sora's entire body, Sora grabbed her head and struggled. Also, something kind of forbidden spell is on her. It was Visego's forbid dance. As he was the demon god of the third seat, there seemed to be that many restrictions. Muyang extended the area of his darkness. Afterwards. Level, 650. Type, Demon King. Strength 490, Agility 580, Stamina 550. Intelligence 680, Wisdom 700, Magic Resistance 700, Magic Ability 699. Plus Rose's Devotion, S+, Eli's Moral raises stats. Rose Vine, S+, Wide Range Attack. Rose Hell, S+, Powerful Barrier Type Magic. Plus Nebula Seeker. Plus Demon King 6 Lord. Sora's struggle gradually faded away. Muyang nodded as he looked at Sora's stats. The ability was comparable to Bei Sungmin. If you look at simply the fight, Bei Sungmin seemed to be more likely to win by a bit. Seemed like this was due to the fact that Sungmin became stronger after his fight with Enroth. Visego's forbid dance. One more thing. Muyang's power of death was able to win against Visego's forbid dance. This was surprising enough and was the biggest outcome of the fight. The demon god of the third seat. Above him there were only two others, the demon god of the first seat Agars and the demon god of the first seat Baal. It meant that Muyang could also release the forbid dance of any demon god who was lower in rank than the demon god of the third seat, Visego. He couldn't say that it was accurate, but it would become a type of standard. In time, Muyang turned his head to look at numerous iron bars. The owners of the stars. All kinds of different species and human beings existed as owners of the stars. The number was almost 1,000. It's a waste to make them as undead. The stars lost its light the moment its owner dies. If you accept the power of heterogeneity and the power of death, the stars would also disappear. Of course, Muyang could also just consume the stars himself, but it didn't seem to be very efficient. The star of the Absolute had to consume a worthy star to shine brighter. But their stars were losing light. They lost almost all of their intellect. Most of their condition was abnormal. If he left them as it is, they would die. However, the power of domination was within his actions. Listen. And so Muyang said, Sora can't lock you up anymore. They looked up and began to look at Muyang. Most of their intellect was lost, but they instinctively moved their heads. It was like an imprinting effect. In the dead spirit world, Muyang appeared like a light. The star attracted the stars. And Muyang's star of the Absolute had the same power as the sun. They have no choice but to look. Just like sunflowers looking at the sun. But you have no place to go back to. Muyang was certain that they wouldn't have left the surroundings as is when they captured the owners of the stars. They wouldn't have become this disheartened if there was something left to go back to. Follow me. When the stars fill the sky, a new world will be born. Swoosh. The star of the Absolute radiated a red light. It was like a roar. The red star overwhelmed 1,000 stars. An overwhelming presence. 1,000 stars combined wasn't comparable to the one star of the Absolute. But the stars that were dying started to emit light one by one. It was led by the star of the Absolute and burned as if they were responding. When that number reached tens, hundreds, and even 1,000, the star of the Absolute shined brighter. The whole world seemed to be in red. And that was the moment. Besides the red star, the star of the Absolute, a blue star that didn't exist, started to rise. The star of Guide. That wasn't someone else's star. It was a star bound to Muyang. After seeing the blue star, Muyang could instinctively feel it. As if they were yin and yang, the red and blue balanced each other and illuminate the sky. And 1,000 stars gathered around it. Muyang's title also changed. The first guide. In front of him there was a book with nothing written in it. Just a white book. There was no title or author. Soon after, Muyang's watch turned. Vibrating like crazy, soon a number of letters popped out of it. The letters soon began to be written in the book. Not just that. The hand of the watch of all the owners of stars started to turn. The letters popped up. Letters were written in books. Muyang opened his first chapter. The following was written in the book. A Muyang calendar year 0, lead the stars. A Muyang calendar year 0, the stars sing. The record continued to be added. And Muyang realized. This little book was called Muyang's Own World. It wasn't written in detail, but it would be a world that would be written more specifically. There was a small thrill. Questions about the star. He had never thought about it. Why do stars exist and how they choose their owners? Why is the number not one but many? The demons were not chosen by the stars. Only those who weren't demons were chosen by the stars. They were all powerful and had the characteristics of a leader. And Muyang became the leader of those stars. Something should be in common. If so, what is the Sky Lord's? Muyang thought about it. Sky Lord eats the stars. Perhaps Sky Lord wasn't simply a shield of Diablo. This was something Muyang found out through simple reasoning which Dantalion didn't know of. But it was a question that brought to his attention when he thought and felt about the stars. Maybe somebody was afraid that the stars would gather and made up a story. The reason why they didn't exist in the past but existed in the present. In the past they did not gather on a large scale. It was because they acted differently as a different race, different group and different goal. But Muyang managed them all together. Perhaps Sky Lord was created because Muyang was destined to become the guide of the stars. Or was it because another third party might have gathered the owners of the star? Outwardly it was a shield of Diablo, but Diablo has already entered the demon god's territory. Demon god Horus was killed by Diablo. In the demon god's territory. It meant that Sky Lord didn't do much to stop him. In the end, trying to stop Diablo was just an excuse, and it was reasonable to see that there was something else they were after. Stars gather to make a universe. Does it mean a new creation? Muyang rubbed his chin. Perhaps it was the path that Muyang had to walk after eliminating all the demon gods. It was when he was spending time to organize his thoughts. Muyang had many ways to strengthen himself. He prepared the most efficient deployment to catch up with his enemy. There was a need for many ways to be strong, just running and keeping up with them wasn't enough. And Gabriel's power helped him a lot. All that's left is Sky Lord. The stats could be increased later, but now was the time to find out about Sky Lord. As Muyang predicted, if there was something about Sky Lord, it would be revealed at this opportunity. Muyang wasn't able to stand long. Sora. Yes. Sora, who was shivering, responded to Muyang's words. Soon after, Sora knelt down. Perfect obedience. The power of darkness due to the art of death devoured Sora. How much do you know about Sky Lord? Sora's eyes turned to Muyang. Created by high-level demon gods themselves to prevent Diablo and his followers from entering the territory. Stop. It was a waste of time to listen more. The conclusion was one. He did not know. He needed to see the real thing properly to find out about it. The other day he avoided it, but now it's time to pull it towards him. Sora, lure the Sky Lord. Yes, sir. Sora, the demon king of roses who had managed the Sky Lord so far, started to act. Although she may not know the story of the birth of Sky Lord, she was better at dealing with it than anyone gathered here. What's left is how well Taken lures the army. Taken sighed. It was not easy to fight hundreds of thousands of enemies with only 50,000 troops. At first Taken was a sovereign, but he was better at being a warrior than a leader of an army. Without Bei Sungmin he would have lost all troops already. Sungmin was amazing at being the tactician and maneuver. Yeah, we are significantly outnumbered than I thought. The number of scouts continued to grow. Taken continued to lose by small margins and was retreating one after another. In the process about 200,000 enemies were destroyed, but the number of enemies had already increased to 400,000. By comparison, Taken had only about 20,000 soldiers. He had already lost 30,000. This seems to be the limit. We need to join the main army. Sungmin told Taken. It was a lot to even endure it until now. Taken had already reached the limit of his army. This was possible because of cavalries, and Sungmin used his magic to open a path for them to reach. But Taken spoke as if he did not like it. Do we really have to turn our back like this? I can still fight. You don't go to war alone. If you wipe out like this, you will break your master's expectations. Why do you think our master sent me? This was the argument. Taken scratched his head. Muyang might have sent Sungmin because he was a skilled magician and a tactician, but perhaps it was for this type of occasion. If I had been alone, I would have fought to the end. Our military situation is not great. Even losing 30,000 soldiers is painful. Of course, defeating nearly 200,000 enemies with 30,000 is more than enough for merit, but it would not be easy to get rid of the enemies with only 20,000 soldiers. There were many enemies. 30,000 troops were worthless in front of the size of their enemy. It meant that they needed to save as much as they could. Taken nodded. I know. But I can't just back away. Taken looked back and looked towards a devil flying with his wings spread wide. He is the leader. He seems to be a demon king and all the troops seem to be acting under his command. Taken didn't just play along. If they moved like one body, there will be someone who told them to act this way. The chain of command would have been minimized. And that flying guy was their leader. If you remove him, it'll be a little easier. I'll buy you some time. Sungmin agreed. The leader needed to be killed before they moved on to the next step. The problem was that they needed to stop countless demons and kill a demon king. Hydra, Amadeus, and Doom Knight. Sungmin called out his strongest summoners. After using Hydra and Hydra's heads as sacrifice, which Beatrice and Doom Knight was summoned, he also poured out his remaining magic to make a barrier. It's at most 10 minutes long. If you don't kill him by then, we will retreat right away. 10 minutes. It isn't impossible with that duration. Taken pulled his sword. Strangely, after receiving one of Muyang's ribs, he felt lighter. If he was to exert all his powers at once, he felt like he could kill a demon king. Sky Lord smelt the stars. Its size was so big that it could exceed the size of an island. The Sky Lord approached at a tremendous speed. However, the real star that Sky Lord was aiming for was Muyang's star guide, the one who had the brightest 2 stars. He also possessed a body that he wanted. Sky Lord thoroughly disassembles everything it swallows. Thus, it makes everything into nothing. But when it disassembles things, its movement slows down a lot. Demon King Sora explained. Muyang nodded. It didn't seem like his stomach could digest infinitely at once. The demons that existed on Sky Lord's path towards Muyang. They were eaten up and he charged like a hog towards him. If he stayed still like this, all the Muyang's troops at this place would be eaten up by the Sky Lord. Speed was quite dangerous. He needed to make it decently full in order to slow it down. Scatter. I will lure him. Swoosh. Muyang spread his Gabriel's wings and began to fly faster than anyone. Taken ran as fast as he could. The 20,000 ghost cavalries also ran. 400,000 demons were behind them. Damn it, I passed the 10-minute mark. Because of it, it became much harder to get rid of them. Sungmin was currently out of magical powers. He couldn't separate a large number of demons in this state. In the end, it seemed that the only way to join the main army was to engage in an all-out war. They're annoyed. They seem like they will follow us until they kill us all. It took not 10 minutes but twice as much to kill a demon king. Sungmin couldn't retreat as promised, but could only hold up as much as possible. As a result, the demons began to flock like crazy when their leader died. Sungmin acknowledged Taken's remark. You should consider getting rid of the soldiers before joining the main army. Didn't you say it was possible in 10 minutes? Why did it take twice as long? He was stronger than I thought. But I won. Taken admitted lightly. The Demon King was strong. He almost lost, thinking that the Demon King was like the other Demon Kings he had fought. Taken shouldn't have overlooked the Demon Kings that were under the command of Larigi, the Demon God of War. Anyway, things happened. Taken had to make a decision. He needed to decide if they would just join with the main army and inflict more damage or be caught up to a situation where they couldn't do anything. Sungmin, maybe we should kill them all. The best choice was to give up his 20,000 troops, but Taken was a warrior. He also had the temperament of a sovereign. Choosing such an option was not easy. Vigor. What he needed now was vigor. Taken thought so. Wait. That moment Sungmin stopped moving. As if he felt something, he looked afar. Soon he urgently spoke. We must be scattered. What? If you don't want to get eaten now? Sungmin squeezed up his last remaining magical powers to use blink. Short-range magic that allowed him to move to an area visible. Taken tilted his head for a moment, then he soon realized why. Fuck. Scatter. From afar away, a huge black creature that covered the sky was running towards them with his mouth open. Taken ran with all his strength. Hard enough that his bones made weird noises. The vigor he had was nowhere to be found. Larigi frowned. The update is late. The new enemies who appeared. They seem to be quite strong. It's because they have reduced their scouts by as much as 200,000. But there was a clear limit to their strategy. He believed that sending his favorite Demon King and 400,000 troops was enough and no longer thought more about it. He didn't think the enemy needed his full attention. He couldn't leave his place because of Gremory's fissure as well. But was it a mistake? By now, the news of their victory should have reached him. They should have brought the heads of their enemies already. But they didn't come back. No signs of victory or defeat. It was ridiculous to even think that the strongest scout team would have been massacred. If their enemies had been such overwhelming power, they wouldn't have continuously lost by a small margin. And if that was the case, Larrigi would have taken matters in his own right away. The battle seems to be taking place longer than I thought. Larrigi got up. His calculations couldn't be wrong. Larrigi had the eyes that saw through wars. When war broke out, he was able to calculate all the variables. And he had already assumed that there would be some intervention. That's why it was decided that 400,000 scouts were enough. His calculation was correct. Could not be wrong. This was true as long as his opponent didn't have more experience in battle than him. But no one was like that. Larrigi was not called the Demon King of War, for no reason. At least in terms of war, he was special. He was the one who lived and breathed on the battlefield. It was correct to think that the enemy's rebellion had become more intense. I'll increase the speed to break open Gremory's fissure. Larrigi has decided. He was going to get Gremory out. He was also sick and tired of sitting here all day. He wanted to get things done as quickly as possible and have a real war. As Gremory was on a level of the strongest leader of the opposing party, it would be a great battle. If we do, the demons that supply the power will not survive. Some demons said worriedly. All that was needed to open the fissure was the pure magic of some special demons. In other words, their colleagues. Larrigi used their magic to find the gate in the crack. They were already pushed to their limits as far that their lives were deteriorating. But Larrigi didn't care. It is reasonable to sacrifice to pay for the greater good. Increasing the time it takes to open the fissure just increases the variables. There were many variables. Now, the opposing party could have gathered, and there was also the possibility of Diablo's appearance. Gremory could have made another move. There were 700,000 fewer troops. Larrigi now only had 1.5 million. It was a number that would make things easy for him. But, although it was a very low probability, what if the 700,000 soldiers were wiped out? Now it was hard for Larrigi to move on his own. Rather, it was better to get Gremory fast and plan his next move. At this rate, it will take about 65 days to bring out that Gremory bitch. I will reduce the time needed. I will open the fissure today. Although it would be a stretch, he was going to open the fissure today. In order to save 65 days, he thought that about 50,000 demons were needed. But he was successful in making a surprise attack in a day. He would have more to gain than 50,000 demons he would lose. In the meantime, he needed to take his time to get things done properly in order to change the situation. Larrigi's eyes were telling him that this war had to end quickly. The gap in his number of troops and the possibility of another intervener. His subordinates became quiet. Larrigi's words were absolute. He was never wrong. What we need is victory. Creation of a new world. As Baal leads us, we must not lose for our prosperity. Larrigi exclaimed. Thud, thud, thud. The demons stomped their weapons on the floor and threw themselves towards the fissure. Don't be afraid of sacrifice. Only victory is significant. He existed to win. His role was to pave the way for infinite glory. Larrigi took out the bow. An enormous artifact. It was Inferno, the strongest bow in the underworld that only Larrigi could use. He pulled the arrow. Then instead of an arrow, a huge amount of magic began to gather. Swish. The force that burns and penetrates everything would produce a powerful effect even if it was a fissure. If they were to combine Larrigi and the lives of 50,000 and their magical powers, they would be able to break the fissure itself. Gremory, you won't be able to hide any longer. Larrigi's eyes glistened. If he opened the gate and took Gremory's head, no more variables would be created. But soon after, Larrigi released his arrow. The power-intensive black energy penetrated the space. And when it touched the fissure, boom, with a heavy sound, it distorting the space itself. The noise-filled fissure was soon filled with black magical powers, and the area gradually expanded. Soon after, the background of the fissure began to change. A pitch-black world. There were several huge castles. Numerous demons were spreading their wings while looking at Larrigi. At the center she was there. The only female demon god. Gremory. She's still beautiful. Larrigi smiled and said. In fact, Many were fascinated by her beauty and her aura. You could say that the majority of the opposing party had a crush on her. Demon gods in love. It was a word that really did not suit them. You're rude. With a slightly restless look, Gremory finally spoke. Just listening to the voice made his knees weak. If God created her, the greatest amount of effort seemed to be spent on her creation. But Larrigi was the demon god of war. He had only existed for war. The charms of a woman had no effect on him. Today will be the last day you will hide like a rat. Gremory, if you don't want to leave an embarrassing result, you will have to do your best to fight against me. Larrigi, Baal cannot bring us back to the promised land. Baal has no power to revive the land that is already full of death. In the end, it's just a hopeless hope. Larrigi frowned. His huge body trembled. Shut up. Baal is almighty. Also, we have evolved. As a real god. It's time to go back. I don't need this fake world anymore. Gremory had a pitiful expression. I think it's not me that's living in a dream but you. It's like a dream. Larrigi was so blind. Words wouldn't go through to him. Gremory bit her lips. The power of seduction did not work against him. Head to head. The odds were infinitely low for her. We will take the lead. Under Gremory's command, 26 demon kings fought. 26 demon kings and 26 demon corps were Gremory's greatest power. However, there were 38 demon kings under Larrigi. Gremory, you planned your own death. Larrigi lifted his bow. About 20% of his magical powers were lost when he forcibly opened the fissure, but it was enough to fight against Gremory. The Eye of War judged his odds winning were 100%. A perfect win. There was no way he would lose. By looking at the number and the quality of their army and the natural powers they had as a demon god, it was obvious that Larrigi was much superior. Gremory was not a combat demon god. Their synastry was also not good. All she could do was temporarily stop Larrigi's movements. Let's play. Larrigi smiled. Push. The moment he took a huge step, a loud sound was created. But it wasn't a sound created by Larrigi. It is the sound of something crashing and bursting from a very far distance. This. As Larrigi turned his head, he noticed that from hundreds of miles away, a giant life form was running towards them at a tremendous speed. It was as if a huge island was moving. Relatively, there was only one living thing that gave this much presence and this much energy. Sky Lord. Gremory spoke. She also sensed something coming. However, unlike Larrigi, she did not only sense Sky Lord. Push. Boom. Vroom. Sounds of explosions were continuously heard. The ground shook. Now the explosion could be confirmed with their eyes. But with the explosion, the scent of someone's magical powers was very familiar. Soon when the subject came close, Gremory's eyes shook slightly. He is. I don't believe it. The demon kings under Gremory's command have also noticed. 2 pairs of gray wings. Gremory, you seem to know something about him. Larrigi spoke. He was extremely upset for some outsiders to intervene with their battle. Gremory calmed her trembling eyes and turned to Larrigi. And said, Introduction is late. He is. Honestly, she didn't expect much. When she asked him to collect the fragments of the fissure, she was grasping at straws. But she didn't really think he would become so powerful, bringing even the Sky Lord. Gremory continued to speak. He's the Demon King of the 27th Legion, Demon King of the Ash Grey, Muyang. Plunge. Larrigi grounded his teeth. Muyang had made a conclusion. That Sky Lord was very hard to tame. It was not going to be done in a day or two. It can't be helped. But there was an achievement. Sky Lord ate all 400,000 demons by itself. Although it just swallowing what was in the way of it chasing Muyang, its effect was amazing. The problem was the next part. As expected, Sky Lord's movements slowed down a bit, but it was difficult to suppress it. Even if I succeed, it would take too long for me to recover. From now on, it was a race against time. Especially if Gremory loses, it would be the end. If he was to put too much power over the suppressing Sky Lord, he wouldn't be able to fight with Larrigi. Muyang concluded. I will go to where Larrigi is like this. Of course, it would be if everything goes as he expected, but sometimes he needed to respond quickly to a situation. And for now, this was the best move. Not having Muyang suppress it but having Larrigi do it. It would be the best result for Muyang if he did very little but gained all the benefits. Grah. As Sky Lord couldn't catch Muyang, he let out a cry before he created a lot of tentacles to attack Muyang. Muyang sometimes fought back and flew quickly while maintaining a reasonable distance. So after a few hours of struggling, he was able to reach the camp Largy was at. I've arrived in the nick of time. But something unexpected had happened. He never expected the gate of the fissure would break open and Gremory would be exposed. The war has not started yet, but he felt like it would start real soon. Muyang speeded up even more. At that time his eyes met Gremory's. Introduction is late. He is. Gremory's eyes trembled subtly. As if she didn't know that Muyang would arrive at this time. No, she seemed to be in shock from the appearance of a man who she had no expectations and didn't cross her mind at all. Gremory continued to introduce Muyang. He's the Demon King of the 27th Legion, Demon King of the Ash Grey, Muyang. It was at the moment he came into contact with the Star of David and obtained the skill, and also awakened as the Demon of the 27th Seat. But, for it to be the Demon of the Ashlight, he didn't really like that nickname. In the first place, Muyang was on a different level from other demon kings. A half-divinity. He had lots of power mixed in a chaotic way and he was too outstanding to evaluate him as a demon king. But it's something I need. If he wanted to use Gremory and obtain the strength of the opposition party, then he had to start with this nickname first. He could change the other things later step by step. On top of that, there was something more important than that. I don't know how you brought the 1,000 sutras, but you are greatly mistaken if you think that the situation has overturned just with this. Largy stood on his tiptoes. A really huge giant. But even he was like a dwarf in front of the size of the 1,000 sutras. The overwhelming size of the 1,000 sutras made you feel fear and respect in front of it. But Largy didn't falter. The 1,000 sutras was also an edible beast. There was no reason he wouldn't be able to hunt it down as a hunter. Largy raised his bow and pulled the bowstring. Fwoosh. The arrow transformed into something like a spear, differently from when it destroyed the fissure and flew while jumping through space. Subjective was Muyang. You could see that he wanted to first remove the cause that brought the 1,000 sutras. Useless. Muyang pulled out anguish. Nervousness could be felt from his hands. Something no human was able to do. A confrontation with a demon god. Muyang had come all the way here, differently from the other humans that had only suffered a one-sided defeat. Solely by himself. But he hadn't reached the destination yet. He had to defeat him. But the only demon god Muyang saw and fought against was Dantalion. And Dantalion was a demon god of lies. He was miles apart from battles. On the other hand, Largy was war and battles itself. Especially those eyes. Those eyes could calculate all the possibilities in battles and war and come up with a method that had the highest rate to succeed. That was the most tricky thing for Muyang. I will still win. Muyang erased the word defeat from his mind. The meaning of Muyang's existence was victory. He may be similar to Largy in that meaning. He couldn't allow defeat, not even once. Muyang came running just to win and will keep running. Fwoosh. A fearsome magical power flew towards Muyang, with the intent to tear apart the land and jump space to devour Muyang. Largy was certain of Muyang's death. Largy's bow, Inferno, is a one-hit one-kill weapon. Even if he manages to block it, it can make him spend a lot of strength. It wasn't reckless to say that that bow was Largy's full power. You got a way to fight back against Largy if you could only stop it. In addition, Muyang was a transcendent being. Someone that wasn't able to measure with mere probabilities the uncertainty itself. Even if he had no means to take Largy's attack, he just had to make something if he didn't have it. Muyang's sword. The essences Muyang accumulated until now. He melted them down on the swordsmanship that took his name. Muyang had managed to create 50 stances until now but had only a clue for the 51st one. He would solve that clue right here. The 50 stances I made until now were only the base. A base to create this sword in front of me. He would raise his real sword. The 51st stance was on a completely different level from the 50th. That's why he had never tested it even though he had a clue on it. Break the limits. If the first 50 stances were everything, then the main course started from the 51st one. The heat started to emanate from anguish. Divine power and magic power clashed fiercely and drew out a narrow gap. He used haste in that state. The world became slow and Muyang became that much faster. Precisely speaking, 64 times faster. But that wasn't everything. The world became even slower. Everything flowed extremely slowly to the point one could feel the flow of the air and the wind with their skin. Muyang's body started to cry. He had obtained the skin of the immortal and reached a half-divinity, but he wasn't accustomed to a world that was 128 times faster. That's right. 128 times. Muyang squeezed out his concentration, ego and soul to the extreme and exploded his mana and divine power. A really narrow state. An act that drove himself to destruction. I did it. But a smile formed in Muyang's face. Kingslayer. He was staying in a world that was accelerated by 128 times. Muyang had finally arrived at that boundary. 51st stance. Before anguish let out an explosion. Right before Laergi's arrow pierced Muyang's heart. Evil Slayer. Muyang soared his sword. Swish. Huge chaos got out of anguish and cut Laergi's arrow that was advancing slowly. It then extended quietly and cut Laergi's right arm, which was holding his bow. But the world returned to its normal flow when Laergi's arm fell. A mere instant. Whew. Muyang took in a deep breath. It felt like all the energy had left his body. But he had succeeded. He didn't only stop Laergi's attack but even cut off his right arm. 51st stance, Evil Slayer. It was Muyang's new technique. How can a mere demon king? Laergi looked at his own arm and frowned. Something impossible had happened. It was impossible for a mere demon king to inflict damage on the body of a demon god. Why was a god? They were gods because they existed in the sky. Beings in the ground couldn't reach the existences in the sky. But that law got broken. Was he called the 27th Demon King? Demon King of the Ash Grey. Laergi attached the cut off the arm by 4 and raised his bow again. But Muyang wasn't planning on facing Laergi again. Laergi, you aren't my opponent. Muyang flew away quickly. Passing by Laergi beyond him. Ah! You bastard! The Sky Lord opened its mouth. Laergi put away his bow and held the sides of the Sky Lord with both of his arms. There was a difference in size, but Laergi possessed incredible strength. There was a break in the movements of the Sky Lord. Muyang got speechless for a moment at that scene. In the first place, Muyang's objective was to make the Sky Lord clash with Laergi, so you could see that he had half succeeded. But he didn't know that Laergi could even stop the movements of the Sky Lord. Muyang flew towards Gremory while the two of them were fighting fiercely. Gremory and her group looked at Muyang with strange expressions. I won't need a fissure fragment right now. Muyang opened his mouth first. Gremory had never promised Muyang that she would stabilize the fissure if he gathered 3 fissure fragments. But it seemed like he wouldn't need the fissure fragment right now looking at the current situation. Gremory then grabbed Muyang's 2 hands. Thank you. If it wasn't for you I would have faced a really dangerous situation. I didn't know that you would even gather the fragments. We don't have time to chit-chat. My followers will arrive soon. We need to sweep out the rest while the Sky Lord is holding down Laergi. Muyang wiped off his hands and gave out a realistic opinion. And then the demon race that was at the surroundings got enraged. Muyang's attitude was far from how a subordinate demon king should act. He acted and spoke like someone giving orders to someone below him. But Muyang didn't mind. I am the one holding the blade. Muyang was the one that listened to Gremory's request and saved her from a dangerous situation. Muyang was also the one that inverted the situation. No matter what they said, Muyang was still the one holding the sword. In addition, Gremory's charm didn't influence Muyang that much. Gremory herself was also quite surprised. All individuals, be it a life form or not, would get influenced by Gremory if they were near her. Unless they were a special being like the demon god of war. But it was the same for Muyang. How long are you planning on watching? Did you choose to get trapped like this and die? Flock. Muyang spread his wings. Honestly speaking, Muyang had spent all his energy already. He had used the 51st stance, Evil Slayer, and spent half of his entire strength. But he couldn't show that off. This war was like a debut for him. The weight he would hold would change depending on how exceptional he acted. The chaos is little. His followers started to move while Laergi faced the Sky Lord. It seemed like there wasn't much chaos as he thought. It seemed like they were accustomed to variables like this. Muyang went out to the battlefield. There was no more need for words. He just had to show it with his actions now. Boom. Fire burning. Boom. The entire land shook. Huge mountains repeated getting created and disappeared. The sky got dyed in black and countless lightning and storms were striking. And Muyang was in the middle of that. Demon King of the Ash Grey. He was called like that. But who exactly was he? He appeared suddenly, stopped Laraji's attack and cut his arm. Not only that, but he was also handling the elite forces of Laraji as if he was playing with them. Gremory felt confused. The first time I saw him he hadn't grown as much. Gremory didn't hold many expectations the first time he showed up with the certificate of the 27th Demon King. Muyang was weak to hold any expectations. He was at the level he could at most fight with average Demon Kings. She didn't expect him to actually return with the fissure fragments. And not many years have passed since then. But the divinity that was felt from him wasn't common. Divine power and magic power were mixed, and a divinity that could be called as chaos covered that. What could have happened in these few years to suffer a change this big? But that wasn't the end. Muyang, you bastard. Where are you going alone that busily? We will join you. Specters and monsters of all races flocked in. They barely reached 3,100, but it was enough to overturn the situation in an instant. On top of that, there was also in Wrath and the Demon King of Roses, Sora. Just what? She couldn't understand how those beings that were of the household of Amon and Visego were now under Muyang. Those two demon gods didn't belong to the opposition party. They were existences that wanted to exterminate those of the opposition. But right now the two of them were killing the demon race under Laraji's command. Gremory turned her gaze again. His appearance while fighting was extremely sad. He was bloody and sorrowful to the point others looking at him felt nervous. But at the same time it gave them a pleasant feeling and thrill. Felt like he was born just to fight. Gremory had almost never seen a struggle like that. Then how would Laraji feel when he was facing Muyang directly? Laraji was the demon god of war. Gremory felt like the nickname she gave Muyang didn't suit him. Although she named him just by his simple appearance, there might be something else that would suit him better. He was taking the lead of everything on this battlefield. The king of the battlefield. He could be called like that. The numbers were about right. The forces Laraji had numbered 1.5 million. And Gremory's and Muyang's forces combined numbered about that much. But the victory was slowly tilting to one side. The Sky Lord was stubbornly trying to eat up Laraji. It was at a level that had almost no intelligence, but it seemed like it could read the hostility towards him. And Laraji was stopping that Sky Lord with strength. The god of war indeed. It seemed like he didn't obtain that title in a slovenly way. On the other hand, Muyang and Gremory were comparatively free. In the case of Gremory, her magic related to defenses was a wonder even though she wasn't a battle-specialized demon. For her to be able to cast a shield this big to all of the allies. Even Muyang got impressed by her, so there was nothing more to say. It didn't even budge at normal attacks and could block about 2 attacks coming from high-ranked demons. The damages the allies suffered got reduced drastically with that. On top of that, Gremory wasn't at her peak state. If you took into account that she used a vast amount of magic power to maintain the door of the fissure, then she was surely going to be of great help in future battles. The situation of the battle was clearly good. Muyang was ruling the battlefield. But a part of his mind was looking at another place. There is another one. A presence that was hard to feel if it wasn't Muyang. Someone that reached the peak in stealth was nearby. Muyang barely managed to grasp his presence thanks to his senses having been broadened as he obtained a half-divinity. One guy. It was impossible to shake off Muyang in regards to hiding. There is one more demon god. Who is it? Muyang was sure of it. But putting aside that there was one person, everything else was a mystery. If he is an enemy, if another demon god joined in the battle, then they would surely lose. Not even the great Muyang could do anything. He still wasn't able to face 2 demon gods at the same time. On top of that, there was the probability that the demon god would have his followers, other demon kings and subordinates not too far away. They couldn't read the situation at all. Muyang continued to keep watch. Because Muyang would have to respond if he moved too. But the demon god from the outside was just observing the battlefield from far away. What is he aiming for? He's not from the opposition party. If not, there was no reason to not help in this situation. And a demon that wasn't from the opposition party only belonged to the approval party. The approval party that wanted to exterminate everything besides the demon race. And there are also some factions among them. The information inside Dantalion's memories. There were some related to demon gods among them, and it was that the approval party was also divided into 3 factions. The moderate party that wanted to preserve some races to serve as slaves of the demon race. The radical party that said that only the demon race was justice. The middle party that didn't care what others said. The certain thing is that he belonged to one of those three factions. He's not from the radical party. If he was, then he would have already raised his sword. This damned microbe. Do you think you can defeat an almighty god? Boom. 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 Larrigi threw some punches. The Sky Lord staggered with some huge explosions. There is no other monster. Muyang felt awestruck. The Sky Lord should have been created to stop beings with divinity, but Larrigi was pushing it back purely with strength. A powerful monster. Perhaps he isn't the demon god of war but the demon god of strength? Muyang hoped that the two of them would suffer damages, but it seemed like Larrigi still had the upper hand. Muyang considered clearing up the surroundings and attack Larrigi, but he couldn't move freely due to his concern regarding the third party. I should find out his intentions. Whether he simply plans to watch or not. Fook. Muyang spread his wings. Thousands of feathers poured from the 4 pairs of wings at the same time. The objective was the air. He threw thousands of feathers into the empty space. It was because not even Muyang knew the exact of the enemy because of its stealth. If there was a change, Muyang would be able to notice. And as expected, a change occurred thanks to the wide area feather attack. Flop. One feather fell to the ground as if it got stopped by a wall. Kill him. Kill that ash. The demon kings under Larrigi weren't fools either. For them, Muyang was an eyesore for them. Muyang was getting focus attacked. Zook. However, Muyang's interest was only on the other side. In the reaction the guy will show when he threw his feathers. Muyang walked towards the third-party demon god that was hiding. The demon race couldn't even slow down Muyang. The heads of the demons blocking his path got cut off naturally as if they weren't there to begin with. There was no way normal demons would be able to stop Muyang completely. After walking for some time. Who are you and why are you spying on me? In the empty air. But there was one feather that had fallen in front of him. Swoosh. After some time space distorted and then disappeared. Now Muyang wasn't even able to feel a small presence. He disappeared in front of my eyes? That wasn't magic or sorcery. But the adversary had moved from space in a transparent state. While having Muyang right in front of him. There was only one kind of power that enabled that. Authority. Authority. A power only beings with divinity can have. It was understandable to have missed that demon in front of his eyes if he had an authority related to a movement technique. And Muyang found someone with that technique in Dantalian's memories. This kind of stealth technique and authority, there is only Paimon. The one that delves into secrets. The secret prior. It was him. And he was the one prying on Muyang. Not this battlefield, Larrigi or the Sky Lord. Muyang. The fortunate thing is that Muyang hasn't used the power of death yet, and that the Book of Miracles, as Nova, hasn't been found out yet. Muyang didn't know why he had come to see him, but that they weren't good news. Information was the strongest weapon Muyang possessed. That they didn't know Muyang, but Muyang did know them. But if they start to get aware of Muyang, then his weapon also starts to lose its sharpness. That's why he tried to take care of the demon gods the fastest possible. I should end this war first. It's not that he didn't gain anything. He got to know that the one observing him was Paimon. Paimon was of the middle party of the minority group. He was famous among demon gods for being hard to read. It was still too early to think pessimistically. But he needed to end this war the fastest possible if he wanted to set up a new plan. Demon King of the Ash Grey, you foolish bastard. You entered your grave on your own. Don't even think of returning alive. 2 demon kings under the command of Larrigi approached him. The surroundings were filled with enemy demons. About 1,000 of them. It seemed like he entered too deeply in enemy camps just to find Paimon. Muyang clicked his tongue and said, I choose the place I will die. Anguish snickered. And Muyang agreed. At least he wasn't someone that would die at this place. Impressive. Paimon, that was looking at the entire battlefield with his mind from the dark basement of the castle, let out a remark of exclamation. I never thought that he could see through my authority. It seems like he has something more special than the eyes of the dragon and the eyes of the wise. Something that could see through an authority was another authority. Paimon's authority was so secretive that it was hard to even find out his existence. He recognized him and even grasped the exact location. Paimon could look at every part of the world with his mind. He was also able to look at the other part of the world in detail. Wasn't that the reason he got the title of the one that digs into secrets? He is at the center of all of these changes. I have never seen an existence that is that ominous, excluding Solomon. Where did he pop out from? It was impossible that someone like that just appeared out of nowhere. There is always a reason for all phenomenons. His appearance would be greatly related to something big. He has moved the time of the world. That technique certainly belongs to the Kingslayer. Kingslayer. Paimon has already grasped that he was at the underworld and also knew that the Kingslayer was someone related to Solomon. Kingslayer is one of the background owners that Solomon planted. If so, there is a high probability that Ash Grey existence is also related to Solomon. Paimon started to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It was understandable if he was related to Solomon. Solomon. A being that has a hostile relationship with the 72 demon gods. He would want to lessen the number of demon gods with the help of the opposition party. Solomon, just what are you planning? Paimon only dug into secrets, he couldn't leak them to others. The matters that could change the world should be only known by him. That was the condition and restriction Paimon had. I will delve into that secret, devil god. Not a demon god but a devil god. Paimon called Solomon that way. Then Paimon's consciousness split with his body. After that he moved his consciousness quickly and reached a place. A huge active volcano. There was someone at that place covered with lava. An old man with hair and a beard so white it seemed like he had transcended the world. Lava started to clear up in the area he passed by. The place he existed at emanated a despair feeling as if it was another world. The old man looked at Paimon but then turned his head again. As if he knew that Paimon wasn't able to tell anything because of his own restriction. Grave. After a while, a huge scream rang inside the huge volcano. It had the power to shake the entire consciousness of Paimon. A huge existence that had the shape of a dragon. Diablo. Diablo wasn't able to move at all, as if he was being restrained by something. The old man just looked at him. Solomon. Solomon. That old man was Solomon. He was at the underworld. Along with Diablo. Quaff. The Sky Lord finally fell. It didn't die but lost all its strength. Larigi that had faced the Sky Lord wasn't well off either. Did you think that you would be able to stop me, Larigi, just with this? There were several holes in Larigi's body. He hadn't been able to regenerate all the parts that got eaten by the Sky Lord. It meant that his magic power was almost depleted. His huge force of 1.5 million got reduced to 100,000. On the other hand, Gremmary's and Muyang's forces still surpassed 1 million. An overwhelming victory. Muyang had also spent most of his strength, but he wasn't planning on defeating Larigi on a 1:1. Instead, Muyang spoke first. Didn't your eyes tell you that your probabilities to win have become thin? Larigi must also know it. The longer his battle with the Sky Lord became, the probabilities of victory of Larigi became lower. But he wasn't able to suppress the Sky Lord quickly. The result of that was his current state. Grind. Larigi gritted his teeth and looked at Gremory that was behind Muyang. Gremory, if you possess a divinity just like me, then stand in front of me with your head high. Don't make us lose our honor with acts like these. He wasn't really wrong. Actually, this wasn't the place for a demon king to step out. Originally, the demon god Gremory was the one that had to step out and not Muyang. Muyang was a demon king under her command, so that must be quite impertinent. But Gremory didn't answer and instead looked at Muyang. The protagonist of this war isn't me, unfortunately, Larigi. Gremory was wise. She let the others know who the merits of this victory belonged to. It meant that she handed Muyang all the authority. And also quieted all the fuss that could be between the allied demon kings. Larigi raised his voice even more. You put a mere demon king at the level of gods? How can you call yourself as one of the 72 demons? Struggling for nothing. Muyang took out a step forward. Taken, Bei Sungmin and the other demons fell back. And started to make some space only for Muyang and Larigi. Larigi opened his eyes widely and looked at Muyang. How unsightly, Larigi. You have lost. Humbly accept that. I haven't lost until I died. And that's not something a mere demon king should speak about. Muyang shrugged his shoulders. A mere demon king. That was right. Even Muyang wasn't planning on getting satisfied with the seat of a demon king. Are you scared of me? Scared? Scared? Qua. How funny. Larigi laughed at him. And Muyang also grinned. The Larrigi in the beginning was hard for Muyang to beat in a frontal confrontation. But it was possible to do it now with a high probability, as he had lost about 90% of his power due to the battle with the Sky Lord. With 70%. Larrigi should also know that, but he wouldn't like to admit it. Muyang threw a bait. Defeat me then. If you defeat me, I will let you get out of this battlefield. Larrigi stopped laughing. Actually, Muyang wasn't the problem here. 100. The army of 1,000,000 demons surrounding them. If Gremory was standing still, Larrigi wouldn't be able to get out of this place with a mere army of 100,000, as he has spent a lot of strength. But if he defeats Muyang, with what right are you saying that? My warriors obey my rods, and it seems like Gremory also agrees to this. Larrigi looked at Gremory and she nodded with a worried look. Right now, the one that had all the authority in this battlefield was Muyang. But this condition was too favorable for Larrigi. That's why Muyang gave another condition. But instead, if I win, I will get your divinity. Muyang had opened his eyes at one authority after absorbing Lucifer completely. That is Authority Devourer. Muyang had killed Pegasus and obtained one of his authorities, 7 lives. But the Authority Devourer was at random, and that's why Muyang placed a condition. One of the authorities Larrigi had, divinity. That was one of the most brute forces that could move a mountain with strength. He wanted to select the authority and obtain that, but only he needed the agreement of the other party for that. Larrigi had no reason to think about it. Defeating Muyang was the only way to get out alive in this situation anyways. Don't think that what I showed you is everything. Can I see that as having accepted the condition? That's right. Foolish bastard. I will let you know why I'm the demon god of war. Larrigi took out his bow but didn't knock the bowstring. Instead, the bow started to change in shape. The bow changed into an armor that had a red dragon engraved in it and dressed up Larrigi. Dragon Hunter. That merit has revealed its worth. The blood of hundreds of dragons strengthens me. You aren't able to beat me. Larrigi smiled. And then Muyang placed his hand on his chest. Click, click, click. Muyang unlocked the lock that was engraved in his chest. Swah. Soon, a huge spear made of light appeared in the air. The Spear of Gabriel. When all the divine power got gathered into his spear, Muyang's gray wings started to get dyed in black. Lucifer's power and Gabriel's power got separated precisely. After that, Muyang warmed up lightly and said, I will also show you my true skills. Actually, you couldn't even call that as their true skills. Making the unnatural thing natural was everything. They felt like they could fly. Like everything that was suppressing him had disappeared. The original Muyang wasn't of an ash-gray color. Lucifer's power was suppressing Gabriel's power and so received ash-gray wings. That was all. These two powers couldn't be in harmony, and it only became a disability when Muyang used all his power. But Muyang had just let Gabriel's power suppress Lucifer's power because there was the possibility it could explode if something went wrong. But it is possible. Muyang got sure of it after creating the 51st stance, the Evil Slayer, that his boundary had increased by 1 leap. And so he judged that he could manage a separation as this one. Actually, this would be a gamble with his life in his life, but he managed it in real life. Muyang didn't hesitate to act if he saw possibilities. That was the reason Muyang could become strong in an instant, and that's also the reason he could overcome several hardships. And it was the same this time. He didn't try to mix it by force, and the operation of his abilities became much comfortable when he split them. The divine power at one side and the magic power at another. Then Gabriel's spear shrunk in size and maintained its shape. Muyang held his spear in anguish like a two-handed swordsmanship. At this point, he didn't receive courtship from weapons or techniques. He had already surpassed that boundary. Everything became equal if he reached the peak, and that was the same for normal swordsmanship and two-handed swordsmanship. He could execute them with no difference at all. But the destructiveness Gabriel's spear possessed was another matter. He concentrated all his divine power, so that was also an incompatible power for the demon race. On top of that, it wasn't a normal divine power. There is no lowly race in the underworld. Larrigi took a step back. A movement he would show only to a natural enemy. That's right. There were no lowly races in the underworld. Not even traces of angels. Gabriel was an angel among angels. An angel that had the power not to get corrupted. Not even Larrigi could think of approaching easily. Muyang wasn't conscious of it when he was of an ash-gray color. It was due to his natural divine power having shrunk a lot due to having Lucifer's power suppress it by force and distorting the harmony. But they got separated now. The complete divine power of Gabriel was contained in his spear. A complete opposite power for the demon race. How can a mere demon king possess the power of our natural enemy? Muyang felt his hand go numb a little bit. It seemed like it had repulsed as soon as Muyang separated them, but it wasn't at the point he couldn't use it. Maybe it was thanks to the influence that the two powers coexisted for a really long time? It was a move close to a gamble, but you could say that he had succeeded properly. Are you afraid of me? And he asked again. But Larrigi didn't answer. Boom. Boom. Larrigi started to walk towards Muyang again while frowning as if he was embarrassed about having taken a step back. I am the demon god of war and a dragon hunter. Do you think I will get pushed by that lowly power when I live on eating the strongest creatures? Bang! A huge black magical power in the shape of a sphere rose in Larrigi's fist. He should be slow because he was 50 meters tall, but he leaped at an incredible speed and attacked Muyang. Fwoosh! The power of a divinity indeed. He only slammed the ground once, but the land started to shake uncontrollably just with that. I will die immediately if I take that head-on. Muyang dodged Larrigi's punch with a narrow margin and finished his calculations. He couldn't think of blocking that punch. Divine power was a pure power that the body had. Even if he possessed a divinity of the opposite attribute, he couldn't do anything against divine power. His body would burst and explode if he received that punch directly. He had obtained the skin of the immortal and wore the armor of the immortal king if he didn't dare to take that hit head-on. I only need to dodge it then. He was confident in dodging. But the problem was that he wouldn't be able to win just by doing that. Fwoosh. The moment the punch split the air, a huge shockwave drove in like a storm. Some of the demon races weren't able to endure it, and some others were holding their ground with a magical barrier. It's understandable why the Sky Lord couldn't endure those punches when he has that monstrous divine power. I only have one opportunity. He already accomplished Larrigi's destruction condition. Being defeated at war. The defeat was ascertained even if he couldn't consent to it, but what could he do? Larrigi would disappear if Muyang could only defeat him. Destruction. A complete death. He would face his end and return to nothingness. And he only had the evil slayer to inflict damage at that body. If he used the spear of Gabriel along with anguish, their destructiveness would increase. I will look at the grain. A being fated to perish always had a grain. But of course, it was impossible to look at the grain of an immortal demon god. But wasn't his destruction condition satisfied already? He wasn't immortal anymore. If Muyang's guess was correct, then Larrigi should have gotten demoted. I can see it. Certainly. As soon as he satisfied the destruction condition, he became able to see the grain. If he could see the grain and inflict damage, his probabilities increased even more. You won't be able to defeat me just by dodging. Larrigi's attacks became much fierce. That divine power was really desirable. Even if your magic power got depleted or didn't a divinity, you could always use the power of your body until you collapsed. It's hard to get close to him unexpectedly. Larrigi's reaction speed was transcendent. He attacked without showing an opening to get attacked. But the one that would get at a disadvantage if they delayed any more time was Muyang. It seemed like he needed an extreme but certain method. Gotcha. Boom. Bang. When Larrigi showed a complacent smile, Muyang got buried in his fist. But Larrigi just frowned. He didn't feel like he had struck something. His fist hit the ground once again. But Muyang was standing right next to his fist. Did he block it? No. Larrigi shook his head. Muyang hadn't blocked the attack. He had fended it off, to a side. He wasn't able to block it head-on, but power was something you could always fend off with the proper technique. But of course, it was impossible to fend off all of the power. The right side of Muyang's body had disappeared. About 1/3 of it. Ting, ting, ting. Anguish fell to the ground. Blood pouring. Blood flooded, but Muyang still felt confident. When did I say that I just dodged? Zep. Re-thire-up. Muyang then stabbed Larrigi's fist with the spear of Gabriel. And started to climb on Larrigi's arm in that state. The spear followed the grain, and tore apart Larrigi's body. Grapha. Larrigi screamed. That scream didn't befit that of a wielder of divinity, but the pain would transcend imagination when they were tearing apart one's body with the power of an opposite attribute. Gabriel's divinity infiltrated deeply into Laraji's body and started to destroy him. A power that never got corrupted met corruption and got into a purifying procedure by force. Stop. Stop. This part is rather weak. From his hand to his wrist, from his wrist to his shoulder, from his shoulder to his neck. Muyang grinned the moment he arrived at his neck. The grain didn't end at the head but at the neck. The end of the grain was in a circle at the neck as if his neck had gotten cut. Muyang stabbed the neck with Gabriel's spear and slashed. Playish. No blood flowed. And instead, a black ominous magic power started to get released. Ah. Boom. Boom. Laraji kneeled down. His body was being dispersed. It can't end like this. I have to return. To my hometown, my house. I don't want to die inside this dump. Solomon. It wasn't the reaction of a god but rather it was closer to the reaction of a human filled with fear. After a while, Laraji turned into dust completely and disappeared. But Muyang crashed into the ground like that. He couldn't endure his vision getting fussier and his consciousness getting farther. Vaster. Bastard. Are you okay? Pa. Some people approached him. It seemed like they were worried about Muyang in several meanings. Muyang smirked once again and closed his eyes. Admiration. A noble knight raised his head. A red star and a blue star. The countless stars that follow those two stars. The two stars emanated a stronger light the more time passed. It was like a comet that appeared suddenly but it was releasing light that could cover the world. The noble knight put a warm smile. It seems like you are doing fine. Are you looking at the stars, Kingslayer? The noble knight Kingslayer moved his gaze. And one old man entered his line of sight. The surroundings were encompassed with lava and Diablo's screams were heard continuously. I kept looking for you, Solomon. Me, that should be at the back? I don't think that our contract was like that. The contract only existed to fulfill my hope but I don't need that contract now. I found an existence to fulfill my hope instead of me. Ha. You set up a contract but want to cancel it now that you don't need it. That's a claim that doesn't fit the noble knight that you are. The old man Solomon laughed as if that was ridiculous. Most of all, I don't think your dream was so light others could fulfill it for you. I believe that he will choose the correct option. I won't get satisfied until I correct the wrong things. Kingslayer. He had become different. The one that had committed himself to his king but got betrayed because he was too powerful. He that despaired at the continuous betrayals at his hope of wanting to set up a kingdom kept despairing more and more and was left alone in the end but that person changed his mind while looking at Muyang. I should also advance fiercely. He would continue to accomplish his will. Muyang was merely a small pebble but the lake in which that stone pebble stopped it created a big wave. I read the changes of the world. I became sure that you would appear in this place again. Until now, the power of Lemegeton has stopped you from coming here but not even Lemegeton could do anything before the accidents. An accident. Kingslayer looked inside the volcano. Double. His appearance was an accident. He united two worlds. And that's how Solomon got to come to this world. Solomon nodded. That's a right, knight. It's just like you said. But what's the reason you came looking for me while canceling the contract? You talked about fixing the wrong things but I don't know what wrong things you were talking about. Kingslayer stopped time as soon as Solomon finished speaking. 128 times. The short moment you could even feel the resistance of the air. The two of them continued their conversation at that time. You wish for the destruction of this world. For all living beings to disappear. That's obvious. This place isn't really the underworld but merely a trash dump I created. Isn't it obvious for me to throw away and empty the trash can when it gets full? Trash can? I know that that is wrong but still assent to that word. My mistake won't disappear with the passage of time. Finally. Hostility. Solomon read that. And the Kingslayer didn't bother hiding that. Fung. The noble knight pulled out a great sword that had the same size as him. Shouldn't you stop the tragedy that will be happening now? The moment Solomon read the hostility in the night, the smile on his face also disappeared. Glorious knight. You are pointing your sword at me, the one that rescued you that should have fallen to nothingness. I am not noble anymore. I am not a glorious noble as I sided up with injustice. Really? How unfortunately. I thought that my will would get through you. Slayish. Fush. In the blink of an eye. Kingslayer cut Solomon's body before he could finish speaking. The ground broke into pieces. The sky, the space, like puzzles, they were cut up into small pieces. Truly, it was not like any realistic phenomenon. It was a very strange ambience, as if the widespread space didn't feel like the same world. Too bad. Just a little bit longer, it would have been possible to enter the world of omnipotence. Above that there was Solomon. And below that, a lot of things that Kingslayer was wearing were scattered around. Although an actual attempt was made to destroy Solomon by moving time, it was not enough. As the after effects, the space and time were sliced up, but the space and time themselves could not be completely dominated. That was Kingslayer's limitation. The limitation of a demigod dragged into vain. Kingslayer overdid it as he pushed his limit, and sustained an impact that was close to coming to self-destruction. Certainly as a demigod he probably knew well that he couldn't have defeated Solomon, the only omnipotent god. The master of the other side should never come out from the other side. The results from everything you do are always destructive and messy. So, wasn't it for that very reason that you've signed a contract with me? Solomon murmured silently. Breaching the contract would result in destruction. Kingslayer. The noble knight of the past was no longer. However, that didn't mean that there weren't any successes. Solomon looked down on his own body. The body was repeating the process of aging quickly to getting younger and vice versa. Still not too bad. I didn't expect you to tie up my time by sacrificing yourself. I didn't realize that such method existed. Solomon. He was at nowhere and everywhere. Therefore he didn't die even if he was killed, but different from the immortals. That was because they weren't the immortals by its true definition. Hence wasn't it that even Baal, who feared Solomon, had sealed the gate with Lemegeton. However, Kingslayer has figured out the only Solomon's weakness. He has forcefully put Solomon into a cycle of time. Going beyond the self-imposed speed of 128 folds, he pushed the time to the 200 folds and forcefully tied him up. Had it been perfectly executed with 256 folds of time, there would have been no way out. Such things were possible by only the Angel of Time. However, the Angel of Time had perished together when the Lemegeton's seal was broken. That's how Solomon understood it. Kingslayer, if you were in less despair, you might have become a being which could perfectly will the worldly order. However, that becoming a reality was not possible. As he has already perished. Despair eats up at deity. Kingslayer was too much in despair to become a complete god. That wasn't the only thing, but all of the cases were the same for the masters of the other side. That was the reason why the masters of the other side could not defeat Solomon. Only absolutely perfect God was able to go up against Solomon. Even the demons or that Baal were far from being a perfect god. Do you believe that you'll have the hope again by putting me into the cycle of time? Even if Kingslayer had force put him into the cycle of time, his divinity was still the same. Omnipotence. No one would dare to fight. Only those with the equal divinity could deliver damages. No such being existed within the world of demons. However, even the omnipotent Solomon could not immediately cause wanted things to happen. It proves its futility. Due to Lemegeton, it was impossible for Solomon to wield his influence within the world of demons. However, if the unusual event, or the great fissure, caused by Diablo was to be expanded, even the cleaning that Solomon desired could be possible. Paimon. Solomon raised his head. The spirit being of Paimon fluttered. He was the one who uncovers secrets, and the unique being which has watched the battle between Solomon and Kingslayer. And Paimon was now at the critical crossroads. Solomon threw the words out as if he was murmuring to himself. The words of, have been placed inside the cycle of time. Perhaps, it could be the only weakness of Solomon. However, Paimon was being restricted from revealing secrets. That was more so if it were to have greater influence over the world. As such, if it was the weakness of Solomon, then it would be like voluntarily walking in the path of extinction. So he didn't say it, but internally Solomon wanted Paimon to tell this truth to Baal. The more they struggled, Solomon's influence would be magnified. In fact, even time could be shortened. It didn't matter to Solomon that much either way. Here, this place to which they, themselves, gave the name of the world of demons. There was no devil, angel, nor omnipotent god here in this place. Arenas. The one who was called the Death Lord was still in the darkness. The other side. In here there was nothing and there was everything. They could see what they wanted to see and they could experience the happiest moments without limitations. And experience despair at the same time. They were all half-deities who fell into futility from extreme despair. It was same for Death Lord. He was watching himself before he was called Death Lord. Oh, great Life Lord, the creator of the magic of life. Thank you for healing this child. Ah, praise Artanas, who is the only holy one on the continent. The magic of life. It was like Hormundklus, which was a synthetic life, creating magic. And by using that synthetic life form, Artanas has healed countless number of people. He has become the hope of many, as he was called the Life Lord and true Holy One. However, does one know that magic of life was ultimately linked closely to death as well? He has overstepped the boundaries of his influence. Going beyond creating synthetic life form, he wanted to expand his influence by encroaching on the magic of bringing the dead back to life. Notably, he wanted to reach the area that was only possible by a true God. And that arrogance led to destruction. At the end of the countless number of experiments, unbounded despair, he turned his body into a leash. As a result, he was criticized. It was the result of practicing prohibited magic and experiments. Criticized as having become a disciple of death, he was attacked by the entire empire. Had I been on the path of wrong? Artanas asked himself as he looked from the distance, on the past moments as they panoramically passed by. Death Lord. That's how he was called in the later days. However, he has not reached the realm of true deity. What if he did not become a leash? What if such experiments have never been done? He asked these questions hundreds, thousands and tens of thousands of times to himself, but could not find an answer. It wasn't just Death Lord. Everyone who has become the master of the other side has not been able to find his own answer. For a very long time they were pacing at one spot. There was only one. Except Kingslayer. Kingslayer, what has moved you? He has moved. He read the strange events and came to find Solomon. Because of sudden feel for justice? No way. Such emotions have been locked away from the masters of the other side. A change has occurred. There was only one thing for the reason behind that. Myung, what have you seen from the bastard? He was incredible. The art of death. He has made the power of death to be his own. However, that was not the end. The bastard still would not be able to jump over the hurdle which was the source of Artanas' despair. It was certain. However, Kingslayer must have seen it differently. Myung's potential is beyond mine. I'm only curious as to what choice he will make in the end. Whether he will fall into despair or make another choice. The glorious knight. As one of the highest-ranked masters of the other side with respect to simple power has recognized Myung. He has moved as soon as he had recognized him. He has escaped from the other side. It meant that he wanted to break away from his past. To take it further, he has dared to oppose Solomon. Extinguished. There were 11 masters of the other side. Likewise, there were 11 rooms in the other side. One of them has disappeared now. The so-called rooms were sustained by the magic power of their masters. As the room's master has been extinguished, so has the room naturally. The result is predetermined. It was a futile attempt. Solomon was not an ordinary god. As an ancient god that controlled several worlds, he was in charge of maintaining the balance of the worlds. He was the highest god of gods, and was in charge of life forms' extinction, evolution and such things, for example. Although Kingslayer, who controls time, had a hope, even that hope seemed to have been shattered. Artanas. He stared at the vision that was distancing away from him. His own mistakes, the things that had occurred in the past. How long would he be like this, just regretting? In the past there wasn't even such curiosity at all. There were only 2 masters of the other side who have come to have such questions. Kingslayer and Death Lord. And both of them had direct connections to Myung. A spiritual connection. There was no wonder that they were being influenced. However, Artanas denied it. I'm also just curious. Kingslayer, as you've said, I'm just curious as to what he will choose, that's all. Only that, I'll do so in other ways than you. Artanas came out of his room. Then the door of the room slowly began to close. Myung opened his eyes inside the temple. The center of the great temple which reached the sky. He found himself in the spring in nude. He inspected his body with some pain. It has been treated. The right half of his upper body that had been sliced off has been regenerated. The spring seemed to have been the factor that maximized the healing power. Please don't move. The healing is not complete. Gremory was on the other side. Wearing a thin shawl over her, she was soaking herself inside the spring with Muyang. Her curves were exposed through the shawl, and if it was a male being, there wasn't anyone who could fight the attraction, yet Muyang did not move at all. Amazing. Even many demons flutter when they see me. Would it please you if I do so? Gremory shook her head. No. I can trust you because you do not flutter. Trust. The two haven't known each other for that long. They have only met twice in person. Of course Muyang had saved Gremory. It seemed that he has earned a lot of points from that. What are your plans going forward? He has changed the topic. He wanted to hear Gremory's thoughts. I'll gather the opposing forces and buy time. If we find S Nova, even Ball couldn't maneuver freely. S Nova is with me. Gremory's eyes became as big as lanterns. As she could not fathom that S Nova was in Muyang's possession, her reaction was appropriate. And just buying time alone is not to my liking. Gremory was a friend for a long time. To maximize the utilization of her, it was necessary for Muyang to show his hand, up to a certain point. Then is there another way? They are too many and very powerful. The only thing that we can do is to buy time, then wait for an opportunity. Gremory was a bit skeptical. That was the reality. To be attacking without a plan was a suicide. Even if having the ALS Nova. They will unify when they hear that Laragia was extinguished. The extremist sect will especially like it. We have to move before then. Including myself, there remain only 5 opposing demons. There will be less than 10 million troops even after combining. Can't even fight against the extremists. True. That was true. There was a limitation no matter how quickly they were to move. However, there certainly was another way. Why do you think that this fight is only among the demons? Then it is not? We expand the stage. Instead of it being just a war of the demon races, it will be made as the war in which the fate of the demon world and every form of life were at stake. Losing seemed obvious if nothing was done anyway. Wouldn't it be better to throw a frantic fight than simply get obliterated? If Gremory and few other demons were to help, it wasn't all that impossible either. In fact, Muyang was thinking even beyond that. The transcendental beings that were all around. Their help will be sought too. Gremory was still showing an expression of not understanding it. It was because she has been thinking that it was only a war among the demon races for a very long time that she failed to think outside of the box. Therefore Muyang said succinctly, I'll help. Deathlord. That's how he was called in the later days. However, he did not reach the realm of true deity. What if he did not become a lich? What if the experiments were never done? He asked these questions hundreds, thousands and tens of thousands of times to himself, but could not find an answer. It wasn't just Deathlord. Everyone who has become the Master of Darkness could not find their own answers. For a very long time they were pacing at one spot. All but one. Except Kingslayer. Kingslayer, what has moved you? He has moved. He read the events and came to find Solomon. Because of sudden feel for justice? No way. Such emotions have been locked away from the Masters of Darkness. A change has occurred. There was only one reason behind that. Muyang. What have you seen from him? He was incredible. The art of death. He has made the power of death his own. However, that was not the end. He still could not jump over the hurdle which was the source of Artana's despair. This was certain. However, Kingslayer must have seen it differently. Muyang's potential is beyond mine. I'm only curious as to what choice he will make in the end. Whether he will fall into despair or make another choice. The glorious night. As one of the highest-ranked Masters of Darkness, with respect to simple power, has recognized Muyang. He has moved as soon as he had recognized him. He has escaped from the darkness. It meant that he wanted to break away from his past. To take it further, he has dared to oppose Solomon. Extinguished. There were 11 Masters of Darkness. Likewise, there were 11 rooms in the darkness. One of them has disappeared now. The so-called rooms were sustained by the magic power of their masters. As the room's master has been extinguished, so has the room naturally. The result is predetermined. It was a futile attempt. Solomon was not an ordinary god. As an ancient god that controlled several worlds, he was in charge of maintaining the balance of the worlds. He was the highest god of gods, and was in charge of the extinction and the evolution of entire races of life forms. Although Kingslayer, who controls time, had a hope, even that hope seemed to have been shattered. Arenas. He stared at the vision that was moving away from him. His own mistakes, the things that had occurred in the past. How long would he be like this, just regretting? In the past there wasn't even such curiosity at all. There were only two masters of darkness who came to have such questions. Kingslayer and Death Lord. And both of them had direct connections to Muyang. A spiritual connection. There was no wonder that they were being influenced. However, Artanas denied it. I'm just curious. Kingslayer, as you've said, I'm just curious as to what he will choose, that's all. Only that, I will be different than you. Artanas came out of his room. Then the door of the room slowly began to close. Muyang opened his eyes inside the temple. The center of the great temple which reached the sky. He found himself in the spring in the nude. He inspected his body with some pain. It has been treated. The right half of his upper body that had been sliced off has been regenerated. The spring seemed to have maximized the healing power. Please don't move. The healing is not complete. Gremory was on the other side. Wearing a thin veil over her, she was soaking herself inside the spring with Muyang. Her curves were exposed through the veil and no man could fight the attraction, yet Muyang did not move at all. Amazing. Even demons shake when they see me. Would it please you if I do so? Gremory shook her head. No. I can trust you because you do not shake. Trust. The two haven't known each other for that long. They have only met twice in person. Of course Muyang had saved Gremory. It seemed that he has earned a lot of points from that. What are your plans going forward? He has changed the topic. He wanted to hear Gremory's thoughts. I'll gather the opposing forces and buy time. If we find S Nova, even Ball couldn't maneuver freely. S Nova is with me. Gremory's eyes became as big as lanterns. As she could not fathom that S Nova was in Muyang's possession, her reaction was appropriate. And just buying time alone is not to my liking. Gremory was a friend for a long time. To get the most out of it, it was necessary for Muyang to show his hand, up to a certain point. Then is there another way? They are too many and very powerful. The only thing that we can do is to buy time, then wait for an opportunity. Gremory was a bit skeptical. That was the reality. To be attacking without a plan was a suicide. Even if you had the ALS Nova. They will unify when they hear that Larrigi was extinguished. The extremist sect will especially like it. We have to move before then. Including myself, there remain only 5 opposing demons. There will be less than 10 million troops even after combining. Can't even fight against the extremists. True. That was true. There was a limitation no matter how quickly they were to move. However, there certainly was another way. Why do you think that this fight is only among the demons? Then it is not? We expand the stage. Instead of it being just a war of the demon races, it will be made as the war in which the fate of the demon world and every form of life were at stake. Losing seemed obvious if nothing was done anyway. Wouldn't it be better to have a desperate fight than simply get obliterated? If Gremory and few other demons were to help, it wasn't all that impossible either. In fact, Muyang was thinking even beyond that. The transcendental beings that were all around. Their help will be sought too. Gremory was still showing an expression of not understanding it. It was because she has been thinking that it was only a war among the demon races for a very long time that she failed to think outside of the box. Therefore Muyang said succinctly, I'll help. Volume 62, The Transcendental Beings, 1. Everyone was silent. There wasn't even a need to keep fighting. A single punch. The earth splashed as if it was a liquid, the ground ruptured as if it was a piece of paper, torn and crumpled by a giant, and the earth erupted skyward, forming a gigantic crater. The temple shook as if it was about to fall. If the great protective wall did not rise up in defense, even Gremory's temple might have been cast down to the ground. Hooing. The enormous impact. The mere sound enough to cause every hair on one's body to stand up. The dozens of demons that were lunging forward to attack have vanished without a trace. It was like as if their bodies have been evaporated. The demon kings stopped in their tracks. The demons that were attacking recoiled in horror. Even Muyang couldn't help but hesitate. I never knew it would be this powerful. He had ascertained the effects of the power of a god. So all he did was to slam on the ground as hard as he could. Even Muyang could not believe in this level of destruction. Although it wasn't at the monstrous power that Larrigi had demonstrated, the monstrous power that originated from Muyang's fist would certainly be different than the monstrous power that originated from a body that stretched out longer than 50 meters. the power level of over 1000. At this level, it was fair to say that he has definitely transcended. He has gone beyond the level of which a mortal could demonstrate. Please stop. Gremory appeared at the center of the temple's entrance where the clear protective wall has been erected. Muyang had a feeling that she had already known that something like this would happen. Therefore, she was able to protect the temple in such a timely fashion. Recognizing Muyang's power, it was as if she allowed him to show who was in charge. And Muyang has proved with only a single punch. Stricken mute, the hundreds of thousands of demons just stared at Muyang. Hostility, malice, that too all vanished. Even though dozens of demons had been killed, loyalty among the demons could not be compared to that of humans. Revenge was a very remote concept to them. Oh Gremory! The demons at the front of the line awkwardly knelt. Muyang too tried to show respect in his way. At any rate, Muyang was the demon king of the 27th Legion, and the one who was called the demon king of the Ash Grey, the name which Gremory had given him. On top of that, Gremory was an essential part of Muyang's plan. There was a need to put her on a plateau even if it was just appearances. At least it was necessary to do what was minimally appropriate. Gremory approached slowly and stood next to Muyang. She stretched forward her left hand and Muyang kissed the top of Gremory's hand. It was like a simple act of showing loyalty. As Muyang has never shown such behavior, the eyes of the demon kings and the demons shook wildly. He is the one to whom I have given the name of the demon king of the Ash Grey. Although he is a foreigner who came from the outside, since he has become the lord of the 27th Legion, I forbid warring against him based on personal feelings. Gremory drew a clear line in the sand. She gave everyone a warning so that such things would not occur again. She also knew that what was important going forward. She had to prevent her forces from imploding at the very least. Also, Muyang's actions gave her a good justification for it as well. Even though Muyang was seen as impudent from their perspective, as long as he could prove his power, the demons and even the demon gods would not be able to do anything to Muyang. It was because power was the only thing that mattered most in the demon society. I shall call an emergency meeting. Please quickly mobilize so that Muramuru, Porneus, Citri, and Asmodai can attend as soon as possible. Gathering all the opposing demon gods, Gremory had the authority. Since Horus and Larigi have both perished, there was no reason to be mindful of anyone. The strategy was to make the first move before the coalition demon gods took another action. With that, there was a very high possibility that Muyang would take the lead and do all the hard work. Gremory has never asked about what my goals were. The fact that she has never asked implied that it would be judged by his actions. Gremory was not someone who was gracious enough to embrace an outsider, who has suddenly came from nowhere without suspicion. She would judge Muyang's true intentions while continuing the war. Did not matter. Muyang's objective was the destruction of the demon gods. It was to find the truth of the world and return to the earth, along with the surviving humanity. Muyang's intention was to truly become the guide. Bypast was moved by others. Muyang was a puppet in his assassin days. Based on someone's need, he had killed without any consciousness or remorse. However, it was different now. He was wholly committed to live by his own way. If he wanted a comfortable life, he could have done so. As he already knew the future, it would be sufficient for him to just remain a spectator. However, he didn't take that path. In his refusal to become lazy and weak, he had tested himself. By choosing the difficult paths, he has come this far. Had he even just once compromised with himself, he could not have reached this point. Move forward. Let me not stop. Let me not ever look back. Well, the beginning is half the journey, it was said. It was as if Muyang has already come halfway. The demon kings mobilized in order to resist the opposing demon gods. They have left with their respective armies. However, Muyang has remained. It was because of something that had reached the Sky Lord. He's not moving. After the battle with Larigi, the Sky Lord had stopped functioning. Was he dead? Not showing any response, it appeared as if he was dead. Do you know anything about the Sky Lord? Gremory too was looking at the Sky Lord. At least, Gremory was not involved in the process of creating the Sky Lord. The Sky Lord was a masterpiece created by the coalition. Gremory shook her head. I had just heard that such a being existed. Perhaps he is Baal's work. Baal's work. Even Dantalion did not know the details about the Sky Lord. All that was known was that he was a very ominous being, and if he hadn't been created for the purpose of stopping Diablo, then the reason for his existence was unknown. Baal was different than us. Maybe he is the only one. So, we never knew what his thoughts at all. It was an eye-opening statement even though Gremory was being indirect. In short, Baal was definitely a different being than the other demon gods. Gremory was recognizing him as such, and based on Laraji's actions, that seemed to be a true statement. Demon gods were originally Earth humans. Myung was a bit more certain. Although he thought that possibility based on the fact that Dantalion had a human name, and by seeing the flashbacks in his memory he had only been certain after capturing Laraji. That the demon gods were originally humans. Perhaps what was different about Baal could be that his origin might not have been a human. Myung thought for a while. Perhaps as far as demon gods were concerned, having been human in the past might be seen as a weakness. If he asked Gremory, there was a possibility that their barely established relationship could be damaged. However, he could not deny the curiosity. How a human could become a demon god. How a demon, a completely different race, could become a deity. You must have many questions. As I'm not originally a demon, you can't help me. Human. You're a human. Gremory knew of Myung's origin. Although he had the ash-gray wings, she has uncovered Myung's origins through her sharp insight. As she knew it, Myung did not try to hide it. Gremory continued with her eyes closed. If it was Baal who had made the Sky Lord, then there must be a deep meaning. Perhaps it was due to his appearance. Since you are under my control, there is no reason to hide it. Solomon has come. It was Solomon and Diablo, who had eliminated Horus. Myung was lost for words for a moment. Solomon was in the demon world. On top of that, it was the first time that he had encountered the information that Solomon and Diablo were together. It was a reminder that the demon god's loathing for Solomon was beyond imagination. It was same for Gremory as well. Along with the fear, the hate was displayed in plain sight. The coalition demon gods must have also realized it. They won't think that Solomon has, in earnest, begun mobilizing. They won't know that Solomon also controls Diablo. Myung rubbed his chin. Could this information be used? At this point in time, the coalition was only focused on eliminating the opposition. Solomon was the perfect decoy to confuse them. Start a rumor. Solomon's appearance? That Solomon is killing off the coalition demon gods. This should suffice. If destroying Horus and Laraji was also Solomon's work, the confusion will grow. The problem was on policing the demons, but that part wasn't his problem. The demons under Gremory's control looked only to Gremory. They have been fully united in blind loyalty. It will not be easily believed. It would be a ludicrous story that it was Solomon, killing off only the coalition demon gods. However, Myung had serious expression on his face. The opposing demon gods. I find it difficult to think that they are a perfect coalition. There certainly are some inside the coalition who has his leg on the other side. Gremory was silent. It was as Myung had expected. When the remaining 4 demon gods gather, the only thing to do is to let it slip out. With just that, the coalition will shake. You want the demon kings to split up and kill each other. Isn't that the only way for the weak to overpower the strong? And if we were to win, they would back us over the radical coalition. Most of the coalition overwhelmingly wanted the destruction of all races except the demon race. On the other hand, the opposition wanted status quo, or some form of coexistence. As Myung spoke the cynical truth, Gremory laughed quietly. It's like throwing eggs against a rock, but we are at the end of the road. We will try everything that we can possibly do. The reason, a justification, was crucial. Myung definitely had a justification. Myung once again looked at the Sky Lord. Baal's intention would be known if the Sky Lord's purpose could be analyzed. It couldn't be known right away. However, the Sky Lord's purpose wouldn't be known to Baal either. In the process of hunting the demon gods, the intel on the Sky Lord would be known for sure. First, I should train before the demon gods gather. He needed the time to adapt to the new powers. Myung was a hidden sword. If a sword could not be used when needed, it would just become a useless thing. It was necessary to make sure that such thing would never happen. A star shined. A red star along with a blue star colored the world. Hyacinth, the beautiful girl, looked up to the sky. With very flushed face. Ah, my king is approaching. Hyacinth, the goddess, was naked. There were tens of knights who stood by her, but no one dared to even give a look in her direction. You're finally coming to see me. Hyacinth waited. Since having been born by separating from the celestial demons, she was certain that her king would someday come. And the time has finally come. I have to get ready to meet him. The most holy welcoming party. The king would be pleased. The girl's eyes sparkled more than any other time. Finally, turning her head, Hyacinth spoke to the knights. Please go tell the Pope to get ready to greet him. We'll obey your order, O goddess. We'll obey your order, O goddess. The knights began to move like stiff puppets. It wasn't just them. The allure that Hyacinth emanated has already overtaken the holy city of Mulalin. At last, one lone female knight who has not been moving approached Hyacinth and put a one-piece dress on her. Seraphine, are you not excited? It was Seraphine, the female knight. The only one who has not been allured in this city. As a result, Hyacinth favored her. However, Seraphine had a complicated look in her eyes. He could not be resisted. Hyacinth was very innocent and pure. So even though it was cruel, it was hard to tell what deeds would be committed should she stop watching over her. She did not know who he was. However, Hyacinth used the expression of he several times in reference to him. He will be pleased as well. Yes. I hope that will be the case. Hyacinth hummed. Seraphine shook her head inwardly. She could not imagine the events that would take place in the future. It was just that she only hoped that he was a normal being.